Frak, this podcast, come and listen to us talk about Battlestar Galactica. It's a show that we're talking about. Hello, interwebs, and welcome to the Frak, this podcast. I am your razor-sharp host, Jesse Gender, and I am joined, as always, by...
It's Vera. You know what the odd irony is just before we started, while I was like grabbing my water and stuff, I was flipping through TikTok because my brain needs stimulation, or it yells at me. And I flipped to it was an ad, and I thought it was a trailer for Project Hail Mary because it started with that, but no, it was an ad for an electric razor, and because it starts with that. It's like, if you're having an adventure in space, you need this.
Razors, you gotta have razors in space.
Yeah. Oddly, the comments were turned off on that video. I can't imagine why.
I love that though. I'm just like, in space, no one can hear you shave. Like, I want to be part of that marketing campaign.
I'm sorry, I can't remember the brand. I would tell you. So
I kind of want to support them just for the audacity, you know. Well, how are you doing, Vera?
I'm okay. Oh God, I've got so much on this week. I'm getting over a cold.
Yeah, that was me last week. I was surviving a cold last week, so.
Yeah, no, it wasn't too bad. I just had a sinus thing. I hosted a burlesque show on Saturday and performed a number in that, so that was a good time.
Nice.
Some of the numbers, there was the Martians on Sesame Street.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
Burlesque number as them.
That oddly makes a lot of sense in my brain.
It is a delightful number. But yeah, that and all kinds of wonderful absurdity that you get at a drag and burlesque show. Tomorrow I'm getting my taxes done, so I find out whether or not I'm screwed.
Submit. You're just reminding me I need to pay my tax guy today, so that needs to be done.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. Wednesday I am art modeling. Sunday I have two different photography modeling sessions. Also, Saturday is my birthday.
Oh, happy early birthday!
Although, listeners and viewers, by the time you hear this, my birthday is past, and you missed it. That said, I am open to late presents.
I was gonna say, you didn't get her a present. That's on you. You better get her some, and also me later on when my birthday is in June. Just to note, put it down on your calendars.
No, I'm so annoyed because I don't post an Amazon wish list anymore because people kept guilting me over it. And well, like I don't want to support Amazon. I legitimately don't. But you know how hard it is to put together a wish list that ignores Amazon?
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
I mean, to be clear, I have one, but it's for all the adult, not safe for work stuff. Because even the service, because I use Throne for this, even that service, while you can put almost anything on it, if it doesn't have a dedicated site that it comes from, it just pulls it from Amazon. So I literally can't put, pretty much any DVD or Blu-ray set or anything like that because it's just going to pull it from Amazon anyways.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I try not to buy from Amazon when I can, but we all have to at some point. It's just unfortunate reality of the world we are stuck in at the moment. But yeah, alas. Well, I had a good week. I did an improv show.
I didn't ask.
Oh, well, fuck you. I don't get it. You never ask. You never ask, by the way. I always just have to start.
But I know you will, so that's fine. I'm sorry. I just had a moment where I wanted to be the biggest bitch.
Yeah, no, thanks, Mom. Never asking me how I'm doing.
Actually, I prefer Mommy.
Well, I'm calling you Mom, so never mind. Shut up. I did an improv show on Saturday, which went very well. It was at the UCB Theater. It was a good time. So did that. I saw don't make sure I get this like good luck, have fun, don't die. The Gore Verbinski
Oh,
movie with starring Sam Rockwell.
yeah.
Actually, weirder movie than I thought it was going to be. A fucking strange movie. Also, a different type of movie that I thought it was be. The best way I can describe it is bonkers Black Mirror anthology because it like cuts
Huh.
away to like little vignettes and they're like little stories about technology and actually more not literally though in some cases literally but more thematically about generative AI and why generative AI is terrible. It's actually probably one of the best anti-generative AI movies that I have seen, even though the movie itself is about AI generally speaking, but not necessarily about like generative AI overtly. But it is very much thematically about that and why it's stupid and dumb, and it makes for terrible storytelling. So I actually thought it was a really interesting movie. It is definitely a weird movie, and you kind of have to be on its wavelength. And it was not what I was expecting at first. I'm like, oh, it's that. It's just this is a heightened reality and has no bearing on actual real life reality in any way, shape, or form. But I enjoyed it quite a lot. So I
Gore
thought it was.
Verbinski's last few movies have very much been the epitome of I will do whatever people will give me the money for and I can get away with.
I don't hate Gore Verbinski. I've enjoyed his
Oh,
movies. Like yeah,
I don't either. I mean,
yeah.
I'm just saying, like, if it, the period in which he cared how his movies were received probably ended with the third Pirates of the
Like,
Caribbean.
yeah, probably. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a good movie. Unfortunately, it was speaking of movies, we were mentioning the Oscars happened yesterday as of this recording, and I'm still upset that one battle after another won Best Picture. So,
See, I have a ceiling on how upset I can get about that because I still haven't seen it.
mm-hmm,
Here is the way in which I am going to allow myself to be upset.
mm-hmm.
Did you hear about Paul Thomas Anderson being asked questions after
No,
this?
I heard his speeches, but I didn't see his
Okay, so
actual.
this was like after somebody asked him about how the politics of his movie connect to with stuff that is going on right now in the world as we are experiencing it, and his answer was, aren't we supposed to be partying? And I
That
go,
no. You know what? Honestly, that perfectly captures my problems with the movie. Right there is my problem with the movie. It's all vibes based. I was like, it meets the moment. It's so important. It's about revolution. I'm like, no, this has no bearing on what actual like revolutionary politics and anti-state politics actually look like. It is a complete disservice to and you know, I would be okay with that if it was a movie that was just like just doing vibes based anti-authoritarianism. Other TV shows and movies have done that, but it is so overtly and directly pulling from Asada Shakur specifically, but the Black Panthers generally, and because it is so specifically pulling from that history, and then just going like, this is all just vibes. It's all just whatever. The people who were fighting in revolutions just were doing it for kicks and because they wanted to like have sex and like have it be adrenaline junkies and weren't actually about like fighting for any ideology. And then to use Black Panther and very specifically Asada Shakur's history to evoke that uh pisses me off. So yeah.
I will leave you to that. I will just say that based strictly off the energy I know that the movie tries to evoke, the
Mhm.
nature of the question and the answer he gave is, if you are uncomfortable or unwilling to answer a political question about your supposedly politically charged movie, then don't make fucking politically charged movies.
Yeah, no, that actually pisses me off a lot, and the reason I'm angrier about this one, and again, no, hey, I don't hate Paul Thomas Anderson. Like, I hate this movie, but I do like some of his other work. Like, I really like The Master. There Will Be Blood. Like, I like his work. So I'm not like anti Paul Thomas Anderson. But what particularly pisses me off about this one is like with the Oscars, I have come to accept that like it is just very elitist, and it is in the Hollywood institution, and it is like they're just gonna do what, mainly upper class rich white people are gonna vote for. It's why we got Amelia Perez on there last time. So I've like come to understand that, but this one pissed me off more because Sinners was right there. It's right there. It's so Sinners is so good. It's so amazing, and it was right there. It wasn't
Yep.
like what was Boots Riley's movie a few years ago? I'm blanking on the title of it.
I'm assuming you mean Sorry to Bother You.
Yeah, Sorry to Bother You. That was my favorite movie of that year, and that wasn't even nominated, and Boots Riley couldn't give a fuck about the Oscars. He literally said as much. So, like, it wasn't like that year where it's like, all right, the movie I wanted to win isn't even nominated, so I'm not terribly upset. But, like, Sinners was right there. So, uh, alas.
Yep.
Alas. So, hey.
I didn't watch. I don't care. I remember checking the results. The first one that ticked me off was when Sean Penn won for Best Supporting. I'm like, y'all robbed Delroy Lindo of even a nomination for Defy Bloods because that was by far the best performance anybody gave that year. So the fact that you deny the man an actual win, go suck an egg.
Especially since he's like Sean Penn in that movie isn't doing all that much. Like, don't get me like it's not a bad performance. It's not terrible. Like, I'm not saying it's shitty or anything, but like he's just playing stock military guy kind of like, it's not a particularly revelatory performance in the way that Delroy Lindo's was in Sinners. So
yeah.
but that
At least
is
Michael B. Jordan won.
Yes, Michael B. Jordan was good. I was down for that. Though I was a little bit sad that Michael B. Jordan was kind of standing for what's his face the other day. Um what Kang.
Oh, Jonathan Majors.
Yeah. He was kind of it's one of those like bros are gonna be bros, I guess, but
I mean, like remember that like they also work together. Like
yes, I get
Michael
it.
B.
I
Jordan
get it.
directed the third Creed that he was in.
Yes, I get again, it's one of those things where it's like I get it. I don't necessarily need people who are friends with people who have been canceled for legitimate or unlegitimate reasons. Like I don't need them to disown them. Like I'm like there's a movement of those people's like you need to disown this person that's being canceled. I don't People deserve to have friends even if we consider them to be pieces of shit.
I still intermittently get comments in my comment section telling me I shouldn't associate with you.
Yeah. It's like fuck off with that stuff. Like I get it. My issue is less that like he's allowed to be friends with him and support him privately or whatever. It's just like right now you have the spotlight on you and to kind of use this moment where you have the attention to kind of like give some goodwill to this guy who is currently signing up for the Daily Wire.
Yeah, I was gonna ask if you knew about that or not.
Yeah, it's like to use this moment and to try and give some offset goodwill to him. That kind of rubbed me the wrong way. So
yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, it's just one of those like be friends with him. That's fine. That's your prerogative. But don't try to give him some goodwill when he definitely does not fucking deserve it. So
also, fourth year running of no Disney/Pixar win on Best Animated Feature.
Good,
which is nice.
Pixar can go, well, at least the people in charge of Pixar can go fuck off right now. So
yes, I will probably, by the time this goes out, have a video out about that.
Yeah.
But yeah, just in general, let's keep that streak going.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Yep. Well, it seems like the industry is kind of at a crossroads part one right now. I had it up. I don't know why. I had the comment section up, but unfortunately it went down for some reason. But
it was embarrassed and ran away.
Yes. Well, we are looking at comments from the episode Crossroads Part 1 this week, not Part 2. So looking at some of these comments here. Yum Yum Podcast said a fun fact that Jesse missed out on, but the actress of the attorney of the prosecution is Clea Hordsdal. Hopefully I'm saying her name right. She's been in a bunch of things like Hell on Wheels, The Man in the High Castle, and more recently played Rylak in Star Trek Discovery, which that's what made me think of her because she's great as Rylak. Rylak is the Federation president in Star Trek Discovery, and she's really good in that. So, And also, she's a Man in the High Castle, which is another show that I really liked.
Never saw that one.
It was really good. It kind of fell off towards the end because it turned more sci-fi. Like it was dealing with parallel universe shit by the end of like the series, and I'm just like, I kind of liked it where it was just an alternate universe with just a little sprinkle of science fiction. And I think it kind of got lost in the weeds of that, but overall, it was a very good show. Um, and let's see here. Where's the other ones that I wanted to read? Omegal says, honestly, if it wasn't for the time commitment, I would push for Stargate next for the pure reason that I think Vera would enjoy it mostly. Vera needs a fun show after Battlestar Galactica. I think you would like Stargate SG-1. It is very, very fun. And Atlantis. Atlantis is my personal favorite. So.
It probably is, but goddamn, that's a commitment, man.
It is. Maybe we can figure out a way to do it. We could maybe do it, but we'll see. 255 AD says, so does Doug Jones hug people without asking? Sorry if this isn't what you meant, but that anecdote made it sound like he just comes over and hugs people, which isn't cool no matter how good the hug is. No, to be very, very clear, he does get consent. Like, he asked before he hugged me, and he seems to ask before everyone else does. So, yes, he does get hug consent. So.
Good on him.
Mm-hmm.
There was one from Super Laser Seth that I liked.
Yeah.
Gaius Baltar is appropriating populist rhetoric to try to avoid the consequences of his action the right way, attributed to Ezra Klein.
Is it sad that like that probably would have happened if Baltar existed?
I mean, yeah, but I would
Gaius
say
Baltar
was
doing politics the right way.
Yeah, I would say no, it wouldn't be sad. It's just a fact, but like no, it can be a sad fact.
Mm-hmm. It's a very sad fact. Speaking of Romler, also says James Callis improvised the line, and you missed Butterfingers. Always nice when something like that is considered good enough to leave in the final version. Yeah, that was a good line. He was talking to Gata, and you missed Butterfingers. So, though I guess it does raise the question, do Butterfingers exist in the Galactica universe?
Well, we found out with the thing we're going to be talking about today that the phrase cocksucker exists.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean, that makes sense. I'm sure people were sucking cock no matter what universe it was.
You realize that like Butterfingers as a turn of phrase doesn't mean the candy, right? You realize that, right?
Yes.
Do I have to explain what
no,
that
I get it. I get it.
Means?
I get it. When I thought about it for more than 2 seconds, I got it. You don't need to explain it.
Oh my God.
But I didn't. Did I realize that beforehand? No. It's just one of those things where you just sit there, you're like, oh yeah, that's why they call it that. And you just haven't thought. I haven't had to think about it. But I get it. Well, that definitely cuts deep, kind of like a razor. And speaking of, we're talking about the movie Battlestar Galactica Razor. I have to say it that way because every time I think of the word razor, I think of Gears of War, the video game. And in that game, they're on the planet, and that's a game which is one of those like, yeah, we're badass and masculine men. And so it has razor hail. Is one of the like things that happens in that game. You're on the planet, and it's like, oh god, it's razor hail coming. It's like the most intense rain. Yeah. So, and they just say it that way, razor hail. So
okay. Boy, am I glad I never got into these games.
I mean, I like the Gears of War games, and oddly, they get better as they go. I actually think like their most recent Gears of War games are actually really good. But yes, they are very much, especially the early ones, very much testosterone, the games. So, yeah. Anyways, let us talk about Razor. For those of you who don't know, this is a 2-hour movie or thereabouts. We did watch, just for listeners, we watched the extended edition.
So it's an hour 45.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different random things that are added. The main thing is the flashbacks, the Adama flashbacks that happen in this. Those were mostly excised from the aired version.
I see why.
Yeah, they're fairly ancillary. Yeah,
I mean, not only are they ancillary, but they add like this thing's already repeatedly jumping between multiple time skips.
Yeah, there's a lot of flashbacks and time jumps in this movie.
Adding another one that is not plot necessary, and also like, okay, This is not the fault of the movie, but it was a problem with my viewing experience, which was I had the subtitles up, and the subtitles would show over the place where like it would say the timestamp for when the flashback was set.
Uh,
So I had a
you're like,
choice.
what's going on?
Do I clearly understand what's being said, or do I understand when the fuck we are? I can't have both, apparently.
Yeah. No,
Whoever
usually
formatted this
subtitles are
didn't notice.
usually subtitles are usually pretty good about trying to jump them up top if there's
Not on this one, they weren't.
Yeah, because that was actually a thing that when I worked back in Deluxe, so way back in Deluxe, when I was doing metadata, basically my job was doing metadata for iTunes. I would take stuff from Warner Brothers or Disney, like different movies and stuff, and do the metadata that would then get sent to iTunes, so that when you bought a thing on iTunes, it would have like all the actors and such. But one of the things that we had to check was we also had to make sure the files were good, and one of the major things that we had to check was that if the movie had any, because we would send the subtitles file as well, if the movie had any burned in text on screen, so any like 20 years earlier, or whatever, any type of text on screen, we had to put that in the metadata so that it would like in the back end like figure out stuff and like move the subtitle file so that it would not cover that up. So that was actually part of my job. It was very tedious because you'd have to like fucking scrub through like a billion like 2-hour movies to be like, does it have any text on screen? So yeah.
Well, apparently nobody did that on this, or at least on the version you sent me.
Mm-hmm. Well, that is unfortunately their fault. Anyways, let us get into our recap. Oh, also I did want to say too, this movie technically released between these two seasons, but it's also technically listed as episodes 1 and 2 of the season. Is technically how its production schedule worked.
Weird.
Yeah. Anyways, let us get into the recap. We start off with a little speech from a new character that we're meeting for this movie, who is the kind of lead character of the film, named Shaw. And she is playing with a flip-out knife, which was not a razor blade, oddly enough.
No, it's not. Like, that... okay. This... There's a fair few things about this. But yes, it's not a razor, and correct me if I'm wrong, we've never seen this thing before.
I don't think so, no.
Yeah. That's kind of not a massive problem, but a bit of one for the supposed significance is going to have by the end.
I don't here's my thing with it. I don't mind it as much because this is sold, even though it was kind of produced as 2 episodes of the show, this is sold as its own separate movie. And as a result, I give a little bit more credence to something that's like, okay, this is trying to do its own self-contained thing. So if you're going to do your own self-contained thing, I think it's allowed to play a little bit more with its own internal symbology and symbolism that is separate from the rest of the show.
I don't disagree, but I still think having your nominal lead character for this story hand a very specific object over to one of your other leads in the main series at a point in the timeline where we should have seen her in possession of this fucking thing at some point. That's not really a minor thing.
Where the object ends up in the show.
That's
I agree.
That's where I was going.
Yes, I agree. That I completely agree with, because that does raise questions of where the fuck this thing has been in the show. But that being said, inside the show inside the movie itself, I'm fine with it having never appeared.
Up until they get to where it ended up, I was fine. Like, I could accept that, maybe we never saw Kane with this thing. Mm-hmm. Whatever. She only appeared in a handful of episodes. I couldn't remember anyway, and I wasn't going to check.
I think she gives it away to Shaw technically before we see her in the show. I think how that works.
Possibly. I'm not gonna sketch it out that much. But the fact that by the end of this, spoilers, it ends up being given to Starbuck, and we've never seen Starbuck with this fucking thing. That's kind of a problem.
I kind of like the implication that like Starbuck just didn't give a shit. It's like,
immediately threw it away.
Yeah, it's like, well, all right. Well, I guess I don't care. I don't give a fuck about that person, so fuck off.
Here you go, Chief. Melt it for scrap.
Yeah, I just
But
that's
yes,
kind of funny.
starting right off the bat, that's not a razor. That's a
Yeah.
jackknife.
No, that is the thing that bugged me, that it's not a razor. And I get it, like it would be hard to have a razor blade as like the symbol would be different, but it is not a razor, and that just bugged me. Anyways, she says, "You're born, you live, and you die. There are no do-overs, no second chances, not in this life anyways. You make your choices and you live with them. In the end, you are those choices." And then we get a little sequence of flashing back, basically through all of the Pegasus's history in the show, like it meeting with the colonial fleet, Kane getting killed by Gina, or Pegasus as we'll call her, Fisk and Gardner's deaths, all the way to Lee taking command of the Pegasus. So it's kind of a previously on.
Yeah. And Fisk will show up. Garner will not. Apparently, John Hurd had better things to do than to show up again.
He had other shit going on. And then we get to see Lee's promotion ceremony. Like Starbucks kind of joking to him before he takes the podium and says, like, you're like a kid on your first day of school. And Lee gives the speech about like 8 months ago, the world changed. We found ourselves shouldering responsibility in everything we'd have. Honor, duty, service. These are more than words. These are the guiding principles for those serving in the military. All that has been in short supply on the ship, meaning the Pegasus. Beginning today, we can't choose our circumstances, but we can choose how to handle them. I intend to give you my all.
Yep.
And he also makes Kara Thrace his CAG. So. And then we see Shaw in the kitchen, where she is currently working. She's sort of working in the kitchen at this point. And she says, the more things change, the more they stay the same, she says to one of her coworkers. And then when her coworker leaves, she goes over to a jar and takes out drugs that, we don't necessarily learn what it is, but my assumption is similar to heroin.
That's kind of all we have to go off of is vibes. We never find out what the hell this is.
Yeah.
And like, we know drugs exist. Like, we know about stims or whatnot, but we've never seen intravenous.
Yeah. She injects it into her neck, which is pretty good. Jesus
never seen
Christ.
Intravenous narcotics on this show before.
Yeah. It's an odd place to inject drugs. Just like, I'm like, I don't know if I would be.
Especially because it is just a needle.
Yeah.
Because it's not like whatever the hell the Star Trek thing is that they just put on the person's neck and it's it's not that. It's just a needle.
Yeah.
Like the way you and I would get a needle out of a med supply thing. Like, really?
Yeah, just going right for the neck.
And just going for it, like not even looking in a mirror, checking where you're sticking that. Just okay.
Yeah. But yeah, she's doing some equivalent to heroin, presumably. And then she has flashbacks to crowds of dead people. And we see Laird, who we know from the series is the guy who's was on a civilian ship, but then was forced to go over to the Pegasus and had his family killed, as we learned way back. And presumably this flashback is from that, if you recognize him. If not, the movie will get into that. But it is that same guy, so you get a little bit of a spoiler ahead if you are paying attention. So we get that flashback, and then we have Shaw going to see Lee. She is asked to report to Lee, and Lee says to take a seat, but she says, no, I'm used to standing in this room, because that Kane never had any chairs in there.
Yep.
And he says, Lee says, well, yeah, even the dead woman casts a shadow, even when she's dead. And he says, you're a puzzle. Tell me who you are. You're top rating from Kane, who thought the world of you, but Fisk and Gardner saw you as insubordinate, and they, clocked you back to working in the kitchen. So that's when we get a flashback to 10 months ago on Caprica. And we see, she's talking to another guy, and he asks, like, oh, is your mother Delegate Martha Shaw? And she's like, yeah, she is. So we know she's a bit of a Nepo baby. And she says, she's like, people like, oh, your half officers would kill to go to the Pegasus. And she says, yeah, but I kind of see it as just a stepping stone, a couple years babysitting Kane, and then I'll be able to call my own shots. I don't want to spend the rest of my life on a Battlestar. Yuck.
Oh boy, hope that statement doesn't bite her in the ass.
Yeah.
Wah, wah.
But then we jump over to her. We jump over to the Pegasus. Oh, so we get it's in the shipyards, as we know it was at the when the attack happens on the colonies. And Kane is in her office. And a few things to note: she does have chairs in her office at this point, which I liked as a detail. That it showcases how she's changed since the attack on the colony. So I like that there's a juxtaposition there. And she's also running on her treadmill in very overt metaphor, as we'll see in just a second. But her XO comes in, who is a different guy than Fisk. He is I didn't catch his name.
It won't matter for long.
I like him though. I actually do kind of like him. He comes in and he's sort of asking, he's like, "Oh, are you going on shore leave? You should come with us. My family would come to, love to see you." And he's like, "You've been going full tilt for a year now." And she's like, "I don't like leaving the Pegasus. There's too much going on." And then he says, "Sometimes it's okay to get off the treadmill," with that heavy-handed metaphor that I wanted to make here. And so she chooses.
Boy, sure seems like you never stop running. Boy, sure would be weird if that was thematically relevant, wouldn't it? Anyway, have fun on your treadmill where you never stop running.
And then he leaves and she increases the speed. So it is a metaphor. So not only does she not stop running, she likes to run faster. She's never getting herself stopped.
I'm going to do this metaphor even harder now just to spite you.
I joke, but I don't mind it. It's fine. And we get a brief little.
It is fine. It's on the nose, but it's fine.
Yes. And we do get a flashback to her childhood during the Cylon War, but we will learn more about that later. It just kind of comes up.
Yes, because we have to have flashbacks within flashbacks, and this is kind of what I was talking about before. Okay, I'm gonna say this now. Just because I don't know where else I'm gonna say this other than the final thoughts, and I feel like I should put this out here at the start. I don't really like this movie. I think its intention it is trying to do too many things at once. It is trying to simultaneously fill in the background of the Pegasus. It is trying to be a character study of a character we've never met before. And it is also just dropping in a whole bunch of extra shit that somebody thought would be interesting or cool that doesn't benefit either of those. And honestly, I would strip out most of this that is not from Shaw's perspective. There were a couple of things that very specifically I feel were flat out mistakes. One of them being Kane's backstory, I don't think is helpful. But more importantly, us watching scenes that we had already had described to us, I hated that for a couple reasons, partially because they are going to be scenes of absolute cruelty and violence and brutality. And when you have already displayed to me that this happened and the impact it had on people through the characters telling us that story, and it had an impact on me, like hearing the story of what Kane did had an impact. Showing me a thing I already know just to try and get a visceral reaction out of me is manipulative and wasteful in terms of use of your time, I feel personally. This is shit I already know. You're just trying to shock me with the actual visual, which I actually think is significantly less powerful than the stories anyways, because part of the reason those stories, like, I think I've even said this here on this podcast very specifically, but as much as it is a rule to show, don't tell, there are specific circumstances in which telling is actually better. One of those is when characters relay stories about what happened to them. It can often, especially if you have good actors, be better to not show it, because what matters is less the specifics of what happened than what it did to the people who are now telling you that story. And you get that a lot more with how they say it and the way they talk about it. My go-to example of that is Quint's monologue in Jaws, talking about the USS Indianapolis. If Jaws had been made 20 years later, they would have had a flashback scene and it would be 5 times worse. And I kind of feel the same about the shit that we are going to see in terms of what is done under Kane, what is ordered by her, and what is done by her. all of this is stuff I knew, and it hit me a lot harder hearing it from the mouths of good actors who really did a good job at selling what being in the room when this stuff happened did to them. Yes. I don't need to see it again. And it feels gratuitous. And given that this thing is taking the opportunity of being a TV movie to be overtly gorier than the show is, it also feels cruel, to be frank.
Many thoughts here. One, I will just say I ended up really liking this movie.
Okay.
I actually don't think that we'll get to it when we get to it, but I don't think Kane's backstory is too much. I actually think the thing that is too much is all the shit that we'll get to at the end that is very clearly trying to tie this into the ongoing storyline. Ooh, prophecy bullshit nonsense.
Oh, yeah, I don't like that either, but that's a given at this point.
Yes, but it is, and I will even say as on its own, it actually works well. Better. Let me say it works tonally better than other prophecy bullshit that we've gotten in Battlestar Galactica so far, which has been very on the nose and like, oh, I'm very special, important boy, stuff that we've gotten over and over and over in the series. Whereas this is just more like mysterious and ethereal in a way that I kind of like, but it is very ancillary to what the themes of this movie are. That being said, though, I agree with you that the movie is trying to do a lot. It's trying to be a backstory for Kane. It's trying to be a character study of a character that we've never met before. It's also kind of doing a little bit with Lee as like a commander for the first time and getting to see him have that stuff. All that being said, and we'll kind of get into it as we go through, I actually think they thematically work together decently well. And I actually kind of like what this movie ends up saying. I have a little bit of a thing towards the end of the movie that we'll talk about when we get there. But on the whole, I actually really kind of like what this movie's doing. And I actually think it's one of, for me personally, well, I'm already kind of revealing, I think it's one of the more stronger things that we've watched of Battlestar Galactica for me. What I will agree with you on is part of the element of that element of the gratuity of showing us things that we had previously heard. I think the most specific one that we're going to kind of already alluded to, but we'll get there when we get there as well. But I'll just say it here as you brought it up. The shooting of the XO, where we had, in the show, we had heard Fisk say that. And we had seen the trauma that it had on him. And then he tried to play it off, being like, I was just joking. And there was an element of ambiguity of whether it actually said, we basically knew it did. But there was a little bit of like, oh, did it not? That was kind of interesting with how Fisk tried to play it off. And also, again, to everything that you say, like, we don't need to see it. It is ultimately just being gratuitous for the sake of gratuity. With the example that I always give that I've said before, too, kind of going to what you were saying, is the Avatar: The Last Airbender TV show, the live action one, where it is so much more powerful in the animated series where we learn about the firebender genocide of the airbenders when we see Aang coming across the bodies and we see the effect it had on him. Versus the live action show, where the opening of the live action show, it just shows us that genocide and it kind of gets at the spectacle of it, and I think removes some of the lingering trauma and pain that I think is much more important to evoke with an event like that. And I think that this does the same thing when it shows us the murder of the XO. It's kind of stabbing the knife in a way that I think is unnecessary for something like that. That being said, there is another moment here that we do see that is also something that we learned of after the fact, which is we've already gotten alluded to, which is the murder of the civilians when Kane orders the civilians to be taken to the Pegasus. That I actually feel is well handled because for the most part, it leaves the visuals of it mostly off screen and we just see the aftermath. And the one moment where we do actually see the violence enacted on screen in that moment, it is actually doing something for Shaw the character and adds new context as opposed to just showing us for the sake of showing us, like with the XO when it's just something we already knew. So
I will grant that of the two, that one is more justified. I will grant that. And also, like, I should just say up front, tonally, I'm not in a headspace where I was probably ever going to appreciate this because this is the show doing a dark grim story.
Mhm.
And boy, am I not in the mood for that shit
That
right
that is
now.
that is absolutely fair, but we'll get to it. There are a couple moments in this movie that I go, okay, I actually really like what this is trying to say, and is interesting, especially when you place it within the context of Battlestar Galactica, the show. Um, and we'll talk about it as we get into it. But I'll just let the game. I like this movie quite a lot, actually. I actually rather enjoyed it. So we'll talk about all
I'm
these
happy
nuances as
for
we
you.
get there. Anyways, let's get into it. We'll talk about the nitty gritty because there are a bunch of things that I do want to talk about that I'm actually excited to talk about. Um, we have Shaw arriving on the Pegasus, and she has her Star Trek
Okay. The ship is the
Pegasus.
Pegasus.
Yes, I know I said
The
it.
character is the Pegasus. So Shaw does not arrive, or as one might otherwise say, come on the Pegasus.
She arrives on the Pegasus, and speaking of coming, we we have the Star Trek sexy shot that I called out here. Like literally, she has the whole like she goes to the front of the ship, and it looks just like Kirk in the motion picture when he sees the Enterprise for the first time with Scotty. It's like
Yeah.
almost the same exact shot. It's not as overlong as that shot, but it is the same shot. So I just called it the handsome lady shot of the movie. But then she arrives on the Pegasus and she can't find her way. She gets a little lost. And as she's going through, she runs into Gina, who is Pegasus.
Yes.
I will call her Pegasus from now on just to make it clear who we're talking about, but her name is Gina. And she's like, yeah, I'm a network administrator. Here, let me help you. And she like shows her like on the map where she needs to go to get to CIC. She's rather friendly, and she says she's working on the computers. I wonder what she's doing as a Cylon spy.
Mm.
Um,
It's funny just because of how much emphasis is put on the way they do Six's hair and the red lipstick. It actually took me about half the scene to clock her, and I was like, "Oh fuck, hold on."
a not over sexualized version of
I
number
know,
six.
I
What
know.
a shock!
She's practically invisible as a result.
Yeah, yeah. Um, there's a cute little bit here where Shaw says, "Oh, I figured where the last name is," but she's like, "Oh, that word is Gemini's for resurrection." Ha 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 ha. Get it? Um, and we learn that Shaw is a classics major, so she actually studies literature. Now, again, it's a joke, but the theme of resurrection and renewal and forgiveness is a theme throughout this. So yeah, it's a yuck yuck yuck. Look, she's a Cylon, but I actually think it touches upon some thematic stuff that I liked there as well. Shaw does eventually report to the bridge, and Kane is her typical mean self. She's like, did you enjoy your coffee?" And Shaw's like, "I don't know." She's like, "Just say yes so we get off on the right way. It took you too long to get here, and in either you were getting coffee or you can't find your way around a Battlestar, and I'd rather think that you were looking for coffee than not knowing a way how to get around a Battlestar." So she kind of chews her out for showing up late, and she says, I know why you're here. You think this is a stepping stone. You've probably got here because of your mother." And Shaw says, "No, my mother's dead. She died of cancer." And Kane's like, "Oh, well, I didn't know that, but you'd be well advised that's the last time you try to play off my sympathies." And she says, you can go to your quarters." So all of this is just Kane chewing out the new recruit.
Yeah.
However, again, a moment that I like here is when she leaves, the XO and Shaw laugh at each other and say, "Oh, it's a mid-morning snack," as like it's a joke, which, I think it shows that Kane is an asshole. But it showcases that she wasn't always completely like there was a human behind this person at some
So
point.
yeah, like this is her being performatively an asshole, but she will soon become just flat out that asshole.
Yes, but I like that as a shade of like, yes, she's always had this in her, but it was not something that was completely overrunning her personality. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Shaw is basically walking through to get to her quarters. But while she's getting to her quarters, the attack happens and she gets knocked out in the corridor. And when she comes to, Kane is there, and Shaw kind of has a moment of freezing up, and Kane slaps her and says, "Follow me to the CIC." So,
Yeah.
mhm. we get to see the Cylons attacking the shipyard. We get to see the blowing up of other battle stars. And it's just decent, sequence of like, here's everything going to shit during this. So the weapons go offline. The computers are offline too on the Pegasus. They have to do everything manually, which is probably what saves their ass, as we later learn, because they were not infected with the Cylon virus that put all the other battle stars down. And so the Pegasus is able to jump away. They have to do an emergency jump, which is a blind jump, which means they could end up in a sun, but they end up just fracking doing it, as Kane says. So, yep.
Yeah. I mean, like that there is part of me that's like, yes, that is true that like doing a blind jump, that is technically a risk. However, statistically, most of space is
empty.
Space. Yeah. That's why it's called space.
Yeah. No, I literally put that as a note too. Like, Star Trek writers are worse about this, but like sci-fi writers just tend to forget how fucking big space is. It is giant. It's the thing that bugged me with Starfleet Academy's recent season finale. They do a world-ending stakes thing in the season finale, but they say, "Oh, he's mined the entire border of the Federation." He's like, yeah, I'm like, so there's a ring around the Federation. You forget that space is three-dimensional.
I was gonna say it can't be a ring. It has to be a dome. It has to be a complete
and
sphere.
Also, do you know how big Federation territory is? Just to mine a solar system would require a ridiculous amount of mines. To do a galaxy quadrant spanning civilization? What? It was odd.
That's absurd.
Yeah. Space is big. It is very big.
Sci-fi writers, space is big and also three-dimensional. Please keep this in mind going forward. Again, like, I don't want to hammer it too hard on this specific movie. I'm making fun of it a little because from a technically strictest sense, a calculated jump, you know for certain you're going to arrive safe. And if you aren't calculating it, there is a non-zero chance that happens. How big is that chance? I'm going to say single-digit percentages at worst, if we're being realistic. But it does. It goes from no risk to significantly to some actual risk. I'm not going to pretend that doesn't happen. So I'll actually give this show a pass, even though I made fun of it.
Yeah. No, what I would say is it's a nice way to communicate. It's like, oh, we could jump inside of a star. I actually think the bigger risk is you jumping inside a place with a shit ton of radiation. Because, like, you know, going near a black hole, some black holes shoot out a fuck ton of radiation for billions of miles, and that will be more likely to kill you than jumping inside of a black hole. You know what I mean? Like the odds of it, anyways.
Well, also, if you jumped inside of a black hole, you wouldn't know it because you'd be crushed down to a single point in space faster than you could realize what happened.
Yes, exactly. Or you'd end up in Timothée Chalamet's bedroom because Interstellar. I guess it wasn't Timothée Chalamet; it was his sister, but whatever. In that movie.
Well, he's too busy not watching ballet and opera.
Yeah. To be fair, that was ridiculous. He didn't. I got what he meant. He didn't necessarily mean.
I got what he meant too, but like,
bad way of phrasing it, bro. I get it, but
it was a mistake for him to try and cite examples at all. Like, if he just left it at the sentiment,
yes,
and not tried to name art forms that he felt were being kept alive, but nobody went to see. The instant he named literally anything, he put a target on his back.
Yes. No, he handled it poorly, but I don't think he meant like, oh, I hate ballet and opera.
That's stupid. I get what his point was, but also, dude, you're an idiot. Shut up.
Yeah. Anyways, we jump back to the present where Shaw talking to Lee, and she says, who am I? I'm a soldier.
Sorry, I have to laugh because part of my brain was immediately like, we jump back to the present, which, reminder, is however many months ago in the timeline of the show for where we've watched up to. Yes. So that's our quote-unquote present.
Yes. Anyways, she says, I'm a soldier. Fisk and Gardner didn't deserve my respect, so they didn't get it. And Lee asks, what about me? Don't hold back just because I've got a pulse. And she says, you're a step up, but you're also an outsider, and it doesn't change your daddy gave you the keys to a Battlestar like it's a car. Which, correct. I think she called that correctly there.
Correct.
Um,
Although also slightly ironic coming from a fellow Nepo baby.
yeah, well, maybe she sees. I think that again. I think that that is a point, though, that the show is trying to make. It's a similar thing where she is seeing a bit of herself in this, and she has turned from that nepo baby into what, as she'll say later, Kane has made her into. So I actually kind of like that as a parallel between the two of them, especially considering we're. This is what I'm getting at later on because yes, it's trying to do a character study of Lee, a character study of Kane, a character study of Shaw, but they all kind of bounce off of each other in different ways in terms of their showcasing different things that they could choose to do and type of person that they are. And I like those parallels. So,
All right.
um, so anyways, he offers her to be his new XO. He says, I need a strong right arm, and I also want to show that I respect Kane's legacy. I'm not Kane, but I want to give this crew this pride back, so I'll let you carry her torch. And she considers it and accepts the position. So,
Woo!
yeah. We then cut to Shaw leading some gun drills, and she does the sort of stereotypical thing of like a bunch of people like putting together their gun, and she's like, "Do you think you could? Do you put that together, recruit? Fire it at me!" And then he does, and she shows him that he forgot his bullet, and she knew the whole time.
Well, no, he does it because like she reaches down and pulls the trigger because he won't.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And then we see Adama and Lee are watching this, and you know, Adama's like, I didn't think there was a possible for a meaner XO than Ty. She's gonna ruffle some feathers, and Lee says, yeah, she and Starbuck don't get along. Shocker of shocks.
Mm.
Um, and Adama's like, well, an XO is not a blunt instrument. You gotta make sure you're a team. That takes trust. And he's like, now that you have your house in order, I have a mission for you. I led a science team take a raptor against my better judgment to study a supernova remnant, and they're like coming back. So you're supposed to go on a search and rescue mission. And Lee sort of asks, well, what happens if we run into the Cylons? And he says, well, you know, use your own judgment. This is your command.
Yeah. And to be clear, this is a different supernova from the two plot relevant supernovas the show has already fucking given us.
Look, there's a lot of supernovas. Space has a lot of supernovas, all right? I'm not gonna
Uh-huh.
blame that. Um, they go out on the search and rescue mission. Starbuck and a new pilot, Showboat, are out there checking everything out, and they're saying there's nothing there, and they're chatting a whole bunch. But this prompts a flashback for Shaw again. They're sort of taking account of everything they lost during the attack on the shipyard 12 Vipers, 2 Raptors. Kane is playing with her folding knife. She's sort of like scratching off blood off the sort of main tactical table in the middle of CIC. Um, and they sort of make a plan to send some raptors on recon jumps to the colonies to see what's going on. They also Shaw informs Kane about the computer program. Like we our computer code was down. That's why we are able to survive. We should keep it that way even after we purge the system. Um, and Kane says, "All right, we'll do that. But I have you gotten any sleep? It's been 2 days." And she said, Kane's like, Shaw's like, "No, it's been 2 days since the attack. So you should get some rack time." And then Shaw says, "I apologize. I'm sorry for how I behaved when the nukes hit. I was terrified and I froze." And Kane says, "That's all right. Hold on to that anger and keep it close. It'll tell you what to do next time." So, yep. So Kane is definitely go use your anger. Yes, good, good. Then we have a montage sequence of Kane going through her ship, seeing everything that's happening. Her stopping and looking at the dead bodies of her crew, which clearly affects her. And then she gives a speech to the crew. She says, "This is your admiral. There have been a lot of rumors going around. I would like to tell you that those are exaggerations, but they don't even come close to the real horror. Our colony is destroyed. Our cities nukes. Our fleets are gone too. There's no other survivors. What should we do now? Should we run? Should we hide? I think those are the easy choices. A philosopher once said, when faced with untenable alternatives, consider the imperative. Our imperative is right here in our guns, in our ship, in ourselves. War is our imperative. And if right now victory seems like an impossibility, there's something else to reach for: revenge, payback. We will fight because in the end, it's what our enemies left us with. Let's let our enemies understand, as long as we survive, this war will not be over." So that's her speech. And then at the end of this, her crew start taking up the phrase "so say we all," and everyone across the ship starts going "so say we all."
Yeah, big chant moment.
Yes, which I love this actually, because it is a direct parallel to what Adama did. Because the big moment at the end of the miniseries is Adama also giving a speech and everyone there saying "so say we all." But I think and again, what I loving this movie for, because it presents like some juxtaposition here. Adama gave them hope. His whole thing was, we are going to find Earth, and it was a false hope at that point in the show. Um, Obviously, we got into our Earth prophecy stuff going on, but he was giving them something to think for, to reach for. And what Kane is doing here is offering them simply revenge. She's giving them nothing but just revenge. She's like, we have nothing else to live for except for war, and all we can become is this. And this becomes kind of the overriding theme of the movie, is just all we have left is to just be soldiers, to be a razor, to be a knife, to be something that just kills and attacks, and to kill all the human parts of ourselves. And so I really like that this scene is meant to clearly thematically, or is clearly meant to parallel Adama, and not be overt about it, but saying Adama offer them hope and she just offers them revenge as a juxtaposition.
I don't disagree, but what I found far more interesting, for whatever it's worth, was that after this, and like she, stops giving the speech moment, and her CIC crew is kind of looking at her like, what? And then she has to be all reassuring, like, oh, like I'm not going all in on that. No, which we know both from actions we already know she's taken, and also will be demonstrated later in this movie, is bullshit. No, she is actually pretty much all in on this. But it is interesting that she is still at a point where she doesn't yet feel comfortable being upfront with the crew. She actually has to look in the eye about where she's at.
Yes. And that leads us to our next scene, because we have her in her office and they're talking about their first target. They're going to go after what they think is a comms relay. And we learn Shaw says Gina helped them find it. So red flag for us in the audience, being like, and there's also a small little moment where Kane kisses Gina, and there's a like little arm hold moment. Like they squeeze each other's arm briefly. So, yeah, as we'll get made clear later on, Kane and Gina were in a relationship. So I'm curious what you think about this. This is something I talked about in my
nothing pleasant. It honestly makes the stuff that happens to Gina and that Kane authorizes Thorne to do to her and knows will do to her even grosser than it already is.
Yes.
Because it adds in this really sickening turn of like personal betrayal, which is, first of all, unnecessary. Because if you don't see someone as a person, you don't need a personal motivation to treat them inhumanely. So this is unnecessary, first of all. And second of all, just I can't think of the other thing that I saw recently that tripped this same thought, but it's just this thing of like, oh, we're gonna make it personal for this character, and I'm like, why? What does that add? Oh, I remember
7 dials.
It was 7 dials. It was 7
dials. I watched your review.
Yeah, no, it was 7 dials, because in like in the original Agatha Christie novel, the woman who ends up solving the whole mystery, she gets involved just because she's curious. She's an intellectually curious person and thinks some stuff is weird and wants to look into it. Whereas in the Netflix series, they're like, oh, it was the guy who was about to become her fiance who was killed. Give her a personal motive. I'm like, why? And yeah. I kind of feel the same way about this, only in this case, it's not only unnecessary, it's gross, because it adds this sort of sexual revenge aspect to an already disgusting piece of, I will grant, in terms of commentary on military actions, not so. I can't remember what I said about Thorne and everything with him at the time. I know I probably said the specifics of the depiction was gross, but I don't think the concept of him and having him do what he does has no place in a show like this, coming out at the time it came out and commenting on the things it's trying to comment on. I think that has its place, but adding in the idea that Kane is having a sense of personal sexual revenge onto all this actually muddies what actual points someone like Thorne could have been used to make.
Yeah. So here's my thing on it. I agree with you. I think what they were trying to do is again making it personal and being like, "Oh, we're seeing the humanity of Kane slowly being stripped further and further away. Like she had a relationship. She was joking with her XO. She had friends. And that slowly gets stripped more and more away. She becomes more of just a soldier, just a tool of the military, which is the overall point of this movie
Yeah.
of what humanity do we hold on to even when we're in the middle of something so dehumanizing, war and genocide and all that. So I don't mind that as a concept, but it is unnecessary just having Kane be like, I am going to treat like even if it's not like a romance, being like, I saw Gina as a person, we were friends, and then now she's an it, and I'm willing to like have her be tortured and sexually abused. I think that's enough. And adding this sexual revenge element of it, I think, is unnecessarily too far. And then on top of that, it is worth noting, especially at the time in which this show was made, this is the show's only queer representation. Um,
Yeah.
and so to
Yeah.
have that and have that be your queer representation is a bit upsetting. I will, because I know listeners will yell at me, there is another queer character in the show that we will learn is queer soon enough. But that one has its own fucking problems that we will get to when we get there. But at
Oh,
this point,
great.
in the show, this is your only queer representation that they have. And it is a important point that they can do this in the movie that gets to be edgier and harder and isn't part of the main series. So it's a character that's not a regular character and is part of their darker, edgier rated R movie that they can do it in. So I think like I get the idea that they want to do it like there's like we want to show some queerness. And to give credit where it's due, I know that actually was something. Many criticism of Ronald D. Moore. I do know that he has spoken up in years past about how he and other writers on Deep Space Nine and Star Trek wanted to do queerness and were not allowed to, and probably had a similar thing here from Sci-Fi Channel. So when he was allowed to, he did add it, and I will at least give him that credit. Um, but he did not do so in any way sensitively.
No.
So yeah, so he gets credit to a point. And that is a problematic element here. So yeah, I don't love it. Let me put it this way. Yeah.
No, me neither.
No. Anywho, uh, one thing I do like about this scene, however, though, is it immediately turns into we get that moment where, as you mentioned, Kane says, I was in the heat of the moment. I'm not going to risk lives on a quest for revenge. We're just going to do a classic guerrilla campaign. That's what I'm doing. That's all that this is going to be. Let's kick some silent ass. The other element of the scene that I do like too is that this is a she says, "Oh, let's have a dinner." So they turn it from a briefing into a dinner where they're drinking wine, they're having a nice meal, and she's like, "It's important for our officers to get together. It's the only time we get to park our butts in chairs around here to be friends." And again, it goes to that point of she had friends, and the other point is, this is her office. She has chairs there, so it was a not only was it a and they don't draw attention to it, it just is. So not only is this she has friends and community and a some semblance of a family at this point, she has made her space welcoming and not hostile, which is what it eventually becomes, much more utilitarian later on. So again, I know I'm overemphasizing the point that this movie is trying to make, but I do think there are some like smart, subtle notes that this movie is doing to get to that point, and I liked it here. So
Huh?
it's why I
Good for
like this
you.
movie. I like the movie. I like the point that it's trying to make. We then have a scene between Pegasus and Shaw. They're working on the firewall systems to firewall their systems for the computer. And Gina is clearly angling to get the codes. She's like, "Oh man, I'm frustrated that I don't have enough security clearance to do all this stuff. I have to rely on you. It's making us slow down." And Chaucer says, "Well, maybe you can ask Kane for it." And they start talking about like, "Yeah, we met when like it's very clear that they're in a relationship, and Shaw's clocked it." And so she said, "Yeah, we met during the retrofit months ago." And Shaw says, Kane always seems so self-sufficient, and Gina says she has needs. In the end, we're all just human. Yuck, 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 because she's not. Get it?
Yeah.
But again, going to that point of Kane is a human being, not just a soldier that we were talking about. But then Gina trusts, Shaw trusts Gina and gives her security code. She says it out loud so Gina knows it, which is obviously a big mistake. But again, we've been talking about Kane, but the character study that we're getting with Gina is she's meant to kind of be in the middle of all of this, whereas we're slowly seeing the dehumanization of Kane. Gina is kind of going down that same path, Shaw is going down that same path, in that she is trusting other people, she's forming friendships, and that is going to bite her in the ass, and that is going to make her pull away from reaching out to others, as we see throughout the movie. So, yeah. Back in the present day of the movie, I guess. Shaw sort of complains about Starbuck never shutting up. She's like, she sets a bad example or whatever, and Lee kind of defends her. He's like, as long as she's, setting a good example with her flying, she's fine. But then they get a bunch of Dratus contacts. There's a bunch of Cylon Raiders coming at them, so they start heading back. Starbuck notes there's something weird about the ships. I can't really tell, I can't get a good look at them, but they start coming back in. And Lee's like, well, we're not going to stay here. We're going to head back. We're going to get them back and then jump away because we haven't spotted our missing ships. Shaw kind of is hesitant about that. She wants to kind of go all in and keep fighting. There's a failure of the FTL. So while Lee is dealing with that, Shaw orders the close firing solution near the ship to start firing, which puts Starbuck and Showboat in danger. So Starbuck kind of gets pissed off at that. And so they manage to get into the ship. But during that, one of the Cylon Raiders gets in as well and nearly kills Starbuck. She manages to stop it, and then they sort of crash together.
Yeah. And in terms of design-wise, the big outline detail of these Raiders is, so like the Cylon Raiders, they kind of have a little bit like a crescent moon shape, with the cockpit sort of like being a little bit of a jut in the middle of that. These are not completely dissimilar, but they're way more filled in, as opposed to having the two sort of points coming out. It's way more filled in between.
Well, what it is, in case you didn't know.
Yeah, we'll get the specifics on why it's like this. I'm just giving a physical description.
We will get the specifics, but even just that design is the design from the original Battlestar Galactica show.
I kind of figured it was,
yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that is, we'll get more on this in just a second, but yes, that the design of these ships is similar to the other Raiders, simply because the other Raiders were based on the original Cylon design, but this is based on the original 80s Galactica show. So, or 70s, I guess, is the original show.
Yes.
All right. Lee and Starbuck are talking back on the ship, and Starbuck is pissed. She's like, she nearly got us killed, and Lee defends Shaw, saying her order probably saved your skin. But Starbuck goes over and confronts Shaw, and Shaw says, nice flying, but don't question my tactical orders. Questioning orders is a bad decision on this ship. Flashback to the scene that we were talking about earlier, which is they go to attack the supposed Cylon listening, whatever it was, post that they were going to attack. And turns out it's a trap. There's much more Cylon squadrons. And Kane's like, we're going to still go for it. This isn't a comms relay. It's clearly a trap, but we're still going to go for it. The XO questions this, like, we're outnumbered 4-1, and refuses the order. And then Kane grabs his gun, shoots him in the head.
Well, no, she doesn't grab it. She orders him to give it to her, which he's confused by, but then he does. So it's not just a matter of like she wrestles the gun from him. She makes him give it to her and then uses it to splatter his brains all across the console. And I use that terminology very specifically because, yes, we have to have it be way fucking gorier for our grim, dark, grim.
Yes, we can get away with R-rated stuff because we are a movie now and not just the show, so we'll do it. And then she orders Colonel Fisk to be the new XO, and he, like a little scaredy boy, is like, yeah, no, of course, I'll definitely do the order. Is the vibe. He's saying that in his head. He obviously is a bit more composed than that, but not much.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've already talked about this enough. I agree with you completely on this scene specifically, in that it is showing something that we didn't need to see to show the abject cruelty of it. So
yeah.
Yeah.
And again, like part of this is just the overall tone. And I'm not even saying it's an unfitting tone for what the story is. I'm just not in the mood for this shit.
That's absolutely fair. The only thing I will say, just in defense, as a devil's advocate of this, like I like this movie, and if you are going to do we're going to tell the backstory of the Pegasus. This is a scene that just because it's the one thing that we knew happened, it is a scene you're going to have to show, presumably. That being said, it doesn't negate the fact that you are absolutely correct. I think it is unnecessary to show something like this, and is just lingering on cruelty for cruelty's sake, spectacle. So. All right. We have then the ship is boarded by Cylons. And the Cylons are going to vent out the air, similar to what happened, I think, in season 2 when the Cylons boarded the Galactica. Yep. So Shaw goes down to try to coordinate the efforts against them. She runs across Gina, who she says go to the CIC. But then Shaw rounds another corner and sees another number 6 because reasons.
Because for some stupid fucking reason, the Cylons put another 6 on the same ship.
Yeah, which was
like there is no tactical reason why she should be.
Yeah, this is just we need a reason for Shaw to realize that Gina's a Cylon.
Yeah.
So yeah, this was the most plot convenient thing of the whole movie for me that I disliked.
Yeah, no, big time.
Yes, but Shaw kills this number 6, goes up to CIC, confronts Gina, say, "Get away from the Admiral. She's a Cylon spy. They look like us now." Shaw or Kane is a little bit disbelieving of this at first, but then Shaw shows her a camera feed of the dead Cylon, and Kane immediately goes, "Get that thing off my bridge." Yeah. And Gina grabs a gun to shoot Kane, but hesitates and doesn't end up doing it, and is taken prisoner.
Because of just how human she now is.
Mm-hmm. She actually does care for Kane. So. Mm-hmm.
Look, again, I'm waiting to see where the fuck the show's going with this, but I will default to what I've been saying for a while. If you're doing mechanical life forms, this is for me personally, the least interesting way to do it.
Yeah, we will get to it. It's coming soon. It's coming soon. We then have back in the present day, we have Lee, Shaw, and Starbuck. He goes over and says, "Act like officers." And then the Cylon ship that had crashed on the Pegasus in the present comes down, and it's as I said before, an old Cylon ship. And also the design of the Cylons is an older Cylon design that within the universe of this Battlestar Galactica we know is the Cylon design from the first Cylon War. It's also the same design from the original Battlestar Galactica.
So. Yes. And I'm a little mixed on these things. Like I get the homage. Mm-hmm. I get it. The thing is, like, these are fully CG, despite basically being the original design. These are fully CG. And I think that's a slightly unhappy marriage. Mm-hmm. For a couple reasons. One, they try and do like the shiny reflective chrome effect, which, especially given how dark visually this movie is, stands out in a isn't properly composited way. Mm-hmm. But I think at least for me, the slightly more interesting reason to pick apart why they don't fully work for me visually is because this is a design that was very clearly made for a person to wear as a suit.
Yes, yeah.
That in and of itself is not the problem. Where it becomes a problem is because these are CGI, they move in a very awkward, stilted way that feels completely incongruous with how much that is just a suit that a guy should be in. Like, they move in a similar fashion to the Cylon Centurions that we see otherwise, but those are also designed in a way that you wouldn't expect more human-like movement. And like, you could make an argument for like, oh, but that makes it seem more uncanny because they look like they could have a person inside, but they don't move that way. But it never quite fully clicked in my head. My brain was going, something shaped like that should have more naturalistic movement, and it doesn't, and it's weird.
Yeah, no, I agree on all of that front. They do a better job with it in Caprica, because the Caprica one, it's the creation of the Cylons in that show. And that one, they evoke the original Cylon design, but make it much more mechanical and bulkier, which kind of works.
Yeah, that was probably a better way to do it then.
Yeah. But we'll get there when we talk about it. Jump forward in time a little bit, and we have, Ty, Adama, Roslin, Baltar, a bunch of others sort of examining this Cylon. And, Ty's like, it's been a long time since I saw one of these outside of a museum. Baltar and Head 6 get a little moment here. This scene I also checked. This one was actually also cut from the original broadcast. It's kind of ancillary because we never really see
I get what. I think this is Baltar's only scene in this, isn't it?
Yep, it is. So, yeah, it's Baltar and Head 6, and they kind of have this little interesting discussion about, like, Baltar's like, oh, this is back when your people just looked like walking appliances. And Head 6, they served their role, they freed us from our oppressors, and Baltar says, well, why'd you choose to emulate your oppressors then? And she says, well, God chose to make man in his image. Why shouldn't humanity's children choose to acknowledge their debt to their ultimate creator? Besides, these bodies allow us to appreciate his creation in all of its glory. Yuck, 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 sex. Get it?
I.e. sex.
Yeah.
Sexy sex. Have we mentioned how much of a fucking object I am? Strictly in universe. Truly. Not to the camera and not narratively.
What I will say is this idea of God chose to make man in his image. Why shouldn't humanity's children choose to acknowledge their debt to their ultimate creator? That is a theme that is not relevant to this movie, but will be very relevant to season 4. So I will at least say that.
Okay.
Yep. So that gets at some of your things that you were talking about earlier. So just keep that thematically in mind is what I will say. But I get why it's cut out of this movie because it's a theme that is not pertinent to this movie, but is pertinent to the upcoming season.
That's I mean, kind of same with the Adama stuff. That is more relevant to larger scope things, but not to the immediate story.
Yes, very much so. And Roslin sort of starts questioning, is like, well, why resurrect a machine that is, outdated? And Athena points out, well, it's like, well, maybe this isn't just them having resurrected this. This might be that these were out here all along. There's stories of guardians, that these Cylons that had disappeared were meant to guard a hybrid, an entity that represented a step between the Cylons and the human form Cylons.
So this is, and I don't remember the hybrid being described this way previously.
It's not because, well, I'll say it.
Okay, so like, I understand that this is not necessarily in the very literal sense the exact same thing as the hybrids that are currently on the base. Yes. I understand that it's not a one-to-one. However, if they're using the same word, then it's relevant. And obviously, we will later get to a hybrid thing muttering prophecy bullshit, much in the way hybrid stuff mutters prophecy bullshit. So they're serving similar functions regardless. I did find it interesting that it is singled out as like a halfway step between the purely mechanical and now the far more human Cylons.
Yeah, the way the Athena describes it is, I think Roslin says, oh, so a Cylon missing link, and Athena corrects and says, no, more like an evolutionary dead end.
Yeah.
So that was
and I find that to be, honestly, probably the single most interesting thing that is in this movie. In terms of what this thing is and why it is and why the Cylons as they currently exist don't have anything to do with it.
Yep. Yes, and this is also the hybrid, like I was saying, the hybrid stuff is very much the ancillary thing to this movie of it is dealing with other shit. Because all of this stuff here about Cylon missing links and evolutionary dead ends, that's going to be y'all season 4 shit. So we'll get there. Yeah. But yes, she basically says this hybrid was the first one that was created. That is distinct from the other hybrids that we have seen in the show. And it is protected by these guardians. And then we get Adama's big flashback sequence here.
Yeah. Big and extended and unnecessary. Gory and not necessary.
Yes. But yeah, Adama says, well, the Galactica is part of a task force as part of another mission where the Cylons were apparently building a super weapon. So we get to flash back to that to kind of go through it rather quickly. It's a first Cylon war.
It's worth noting we have a young Adama portrayed by a different actor.
Yes, who's definitely doing a gravelly voice the whole time. trying to do.
He's doing his best. It's actually he doesn't do too bad a job evoking Edward James Olmos's voice, considering that it is very clear that it's not his natural register the way that it is for Edward James Olmos. He's okay with it.
Yeah, no, he's not bad. I don't mind this actor. It's funny though because it is there is another movie that we will watch down the line is Blood and Chrome, which is a movie set during the First Silent War, following Adama as a young pilot. So we will also watch that movie, but it's a different actor in that movie.
Oh,
so
it's kind of a shame, actually.
Yeah, because that was done as this is just done as a one-off, whereas for that movie it was meant to be a pilot for a potential series that never got picked up. And also was done several years later, so like 4 or 5 years after Galactica ended. So this actor may not have been available at that point. So,
no, I hope that that's the case, and not just a matter of them going, "Yeah, we could do better."
Yeah. Who knows? Or it might have just been too old for what they were trying. Because I think that movie takes place even before. Because this is presumably the end of the Silent War, as we'll see. So this takes place earlier than that. So.
Yeah.
Anyways. To kind of go through this, what I will note too is the music used in the opening sequence of this is the original theme song from Battlestar Galactica, but it played much more like grim, dark, and stuff. But it's
of course
that whole thing. So but anyways, Husker Adama, that's his call sign, Husker. He's in the middle of a battle.
That's not call sign. You might as well call him Farm Boy. What is this?
Yes. Anyways, he's in the middle of dogfight with some Cylons. During the battle, the other Battlestar that he is with, the Columbia, blows up. He follows the two raiders that he's tracking into the atmosphere of a planet. He blows up one, but then crashes into the other, and he and the other Cylon pilot have to eject. They both start crashing towards the planet. They start shooting at each other while orbital skydiving.
It is very 70s James Bond. This bit.
I thought it was funny.
It's very Roger Moore James Bond.
It is cheesy in a way that I like because this sequence is meant to be evoking the original show. So in that sense of cheese, I think it feels appropriate. So that it worked.
How much cheese do you want with this? As much as you got, baby.
Yeah, I was down. I was on its wavelength. Anyways, Adama manages to pull his chute. The other Cylon crashes into a Cylon base that is on the planet, and Adama lands and kills that Cylon. He goes and starts exploring the base, and he finds gooey flesh stuff. And very David Cronenbergian nonsense going on, like hands being flayed apart and all that jazz.
I was gonna say I wouldn't compare this to Cronenberg. This is more Eli Roth stuff because this is just identifiable body parts that have been disassembled.
Yes. I kind of liked it. It is let me put it this way. It is not utilized in a way that is particularly interesting and is just gore for gore's sake, but there is a part of me, my body horror loving part of me, that does just enjoy the prosthetics themselves.
So. It didn't trip my body horror liking brain because it's not weird enough.
Mm.
It's too much gore and it's not enough weird.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But anyways, he sees all this stuff. He even sticks his hand in what we know to be a regeneration pod and kind of has flashes of other stuff that happened. And he hears the voice of what we will learn is the hybrid saying, all this has happened before, all this will happen again. He does not see the hybrid.
Yeah.
Adama hears knocking, and he goes and finds some civilians. He tries to rescue them. They're like, there were 50 of us. They've been torturing us, and Adama tries to save them, but is unable to get the door open. The prisoners say, leave us, just tell them our story. And so he gets out and radios the Galactica. So those people were left behind, but he is able to call the Galactica and says, they were doing something down here, but the war is over and an armistice has just been signed. He learns.
Can I note the one very specific for me and my tastes, I know this does not bother other people, but the one very specific detail that was in there that really, really rubbed me the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
As he's running away, yes, there was the guy who encouraged him, don't you die here with us and leave. But, there's a woman who's reaching out for help who says nothing. Of course not. But while he's running away, there is very specifically the sound of a child screaming.
Mm.
It's even in the subtitles. Child screams. Fuck off.
Fair, fair.
That kind of shit is like at the heart of what I single out when I say that something is needlessly cruel. There is no reason to emphasize that there were children there, implying children had been getting tortured for however fucking long. There is no need to do that other than to simply be crueler than it already is. And fuck you.
Yeah, no, absolutely fair on that front. Um, Back in the present, Rosalind sort of assumes, well, the hybrid must still exist. And then Adama goes and talks to Lee in another scene. He says, well, we found the possible location of the base. It's about 2 jumps away. I can't commit, and Rosalind's saying this, I can't commit both Battlestars. So Adama says, well, I'm transferring my flag to the Pegasus. You're still in command, Lee. I'm just coming along because I have a personal stake in this because of my history with it. And I won't let this happen again to our own people, so we need to go and rescue them. So basically, he's kind of basically like, we need to go and save our people from this torture because I wasn't able to save the people in the past.
Yep.
Yep, and Lee says, I'll have our XO come up with another plan. And that's when Rosin says, I have another matter speaking of that. Lee then is talking to Shaw. Shaw is basically telling him her plan, which is the Pegasus will act basically as a distraction for the bulk of the Guardian Cylon's forces. And while that's going on, a Raptor with Shaw, a strike team piloted by Starbuck, will sneak onto the base and try to rescue the people. And it's noted that Shaw trusts Thrace as a pilot, which is something to say at least. But then Lee sort of points out, well, the president says you were involved in the Celia incident where 10 people were executed. Is that true? And Shaw kind of tries to say, well, I was there, but I guess that's enough to indict me. Kind of like denying any real culpability in the event, just saying I was there. And she says, said you wanted to respect Kane's legacy. I am Kane's legacy. I'm alive because of the choices she made. She wouldn't have blinked twice at this plan. You can't risk wars without risking lives, she would say. And if you can't do that, you would risk you can have my resignation. And Lee says, well, that would be easy. That would be the easy way to do it. But your plan's risky, but it's the only game in town, so your plan's approved. So.
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, the big thing here with this is that Shaw was involved in some incident, but she is clearly denying any sense of responsibility for it.
Well, you say some incident. We already kind of know what this is because it had been discussed earlier in the show proper. Yes. I don't know if it had been named in the same way, but the incident, it was mentioned where 10 civilians were killed. If you remember the Kane stuff from previously at all, then you know what this is.
Yes, very much so. We then have Shaw going down to the kitchen to find her heroin. And she starts listening to a radio, and then it flashes back 10 months ago. We learned that the battle against the trap that they were essentially sent in by Gina, they paid a high price for it. They lost 800 people and 32 Vipers. And she says Kane says it was a high price for a tactically insignificant victory. Gina also feels guilty. She's like, I gave it my access codes, referring to Gina, and it's revealed that we are standing in front of Gina's cell. So Gina is in her cell right now, sort of watching them. And Kane is also dehumanizing Gina, saying, you gave it your trust, but these things know how to manipulate you. So she's obviously clearly a woman scorned. Then Thorne comes in, and we've already talked about this, but she very clearly gives implies the go-ahead to basically do whatever the fuck you want to Gina, including sexually assaulting her.
Yes.
Yes, and we've already talked about that enough. So we then jump to the CIC, and we learn that they have detected a fleet of civilians, clearly alluding to the incident that we were talking about. Fisk is very excited about this. It's like, it's 15 ships. It's really great. Kane then immediately says, contact those ships, have them forward passenger manifest and inventory of any weapons, and then assemble teams of Marines and board those ships and take everything we need from those ships. But once they realize that our intent, you'll need to act swiftly. And Fisk kind of seems horrified at this, but then Kane says, if you have a problem, I need to hear it now. And Fisk does not speak up, knowing what the consequence will probably be.
Yeah.
Yep. We then have a Marine strike team going to the Celia, the ship that we mentioned before in the present day, with Shaw and Fisker on this team. They come aboard. Laird, the guy that I mentioned before, the guy that we know's family gets killed if we were paying attention in the original
Yeah.
show.
And who vanished from the show at some
Yeah, he
point.
never came back, but he came back for this. So, yeah.
Which it is a shame because
I liked him, yeah.
I liked him and I think he could have been a really fascinating character in that. So like the show already has a mix of people who at least a little bit kind of signed up for this kind of stuff, i.e., all the military people and all the civilians who are stuck on these ships because there's literally nowhere else to be. And like, I think there was mileage to be had in somebody who was not really in either position because
conscripted against his will. Yeah.
Yeah, he was a civilian, but also he has a place, he has a job to do, and he can help and he will, but he didn't volunteer.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it also could have really been used to emphasize some of the points that the show should be making about Adama and Roslin if they were to like make the point to him like, no, you can't go back to civilian life. We need your skills. We know we wouldn't have conscripted you like this, but now that you have been, we're going to keep making you do it. And I think it really could have lent a lot. And instead he is just at some point he fucking vanished.
Yeah, it is sad because that would have been very interesting and would have spoken to stuff like we talk about with Biden, where like Biden was like, "Oh yeah, Donald Trump was terrible. He's awful," but ultimately he continued and even extended a lot of like Trump's policies around things like at the border, at the Mexican border, and immigration policies. It's a thing a lot of liberal politicians do. Like Clinton did the same thing with Reagan, being like, "Well, I'll be better than Reagan. I'll be the more liberal version of it," but will ultimately continue a lot of those conservative policies that were pushed forward.
Yeah. And ultimately, what it usually translates to is I will not initiate new horrible policies. I will keep in place the existing ones, though.
Yes, exactly. And that's how we slide further and further to the right. So,
yep.
Anyways, so yeah, well, that would have been an interesting way to handle that. But obviously, we don't want to do that on this show. No.
No, we don't want to actually use Adama or Roslin to challenge the idea that maybe either of them are deeply flawed people and maybe are not suited to power. And maybe you could even make the argument that nobody is, and this is what we're stuck with. No, that would be
Vera, careful. You're sounding like an anarchist there.
That would be an interesting point to make. We can't have that.
No. Anyways, the Marine team goes there, and it kind of goes basically as you think it will. Fisk says we're going to take your FTL drive and take these people. We'll make and Shaw's like, we'll make accommodations best we can, but we're taking these people. And Laird and the people on the ship sort of start protesting this, like, you can't do that. You're supposed to be here to help us. And Fisk sort of starts saying, we'll use force. But then we cut over to Kane, and she's in the cell or in the brig, looking at Gina, who has been beaten up, and clearly
Gina, who's not only been beaten up, is currently bloodied and is trying to cover herself.
Yes,
because her clothes have been torn.
Yes,
because fucking ew.
Yes, but Kane gets a call. And it's Fisk saying, hey, they're denying us access to the ship. We have whole families here. And then Kane looks at Gina and says, well, you'll shoot the family of any selectee who doesn't comply. Get it done. So it's a moment of like her feeling of betrayal from Gina is part of what motivates her to say, let's shoot these families.
Which is so fucking stupid.
Yeah, it's unnecessary. It's deeply unnecessary.
It is deeply unnecessary, especially considering like the points this thing's going to try and make later about how being made into nothing but a soldier strips you down of your humanity. You weaken that point by having part of what has made Kane a monster be she's a woman scorned.
Yes. Yeah.
Like that weakens every other point you're making.
Yes, I agree completely. Yeah, I agree on that. Fisk says get them lined up. They force people to the deck, and he basically is saying, he's like, we'll do it. He basically is like kind of barking really loudly, but not necessarily doing it yet.
Yeah, he points he draws a gun, but he points it at the ceiling.
Yeah, he shoots into the air. Then we skip over some time and we don't see what happens
We
yet.
don't, but we hear shots. So
Yes, we hear
like
shots.
we hear repeated shots fired.
Yes, but we don't see anything happen yet. And then we see Fisk. And this is what actually, this is kind of the point that I was making. This is not as gratuitous as it could have been. We see, like,
No, it's not.
yeah, we don't see it actually happening except for one moment later on, which is actually pertinent. Um, but yes, we hear the firing, and then Fisk goes over to Shaw, who's clearly dissociating in some way, and he says, "It's over. The whole fleet will have heard of what's happened. There won't be any more resistance." And Shaw looks over and sees the dead bodies of the people.
Yeah.
So
It was actually, I actually wrote down that line, "There won't be any more resistance," which I found interesting and would have liked to have seen more examined insofar as I think you really could have done something with having somebody, whether it's Fisk or Kane or anybody, retroactively justify this act, not just to get them to cooperate now, but like we only have to do this once and then everyone will obey and we never have to do it again. And to like somehow, because that was never the plan. Kane just said do it, but to try and claim this unintended from their perspective benefit,
yeah,
as a reason,
this will be a deterrent,
as a reason why what they just did is a good thing.
Yeah, we had to do it because this is the best way to get everyone. Like, we saved lives. Ultimately, is probably what Fisk is justifying in his head.
Yeah. What again would have been interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, all that happened. Back in the present, Shaw goes to grab her heroin, but Starbuck is there with her own vice, a bottle of alcohol. And she basically says, initially Starbuck seems to play it off like, oh yeah, I used to do that. I used to scrub through the wireless bands, but then she reveals like, oh, do you have any more of that stuff you're about to shoot into your neck? And she sort of makes the connection. It's like, yeah, we both have our vices. I came for the bottle. You came for this, just trying to take the edge off. And Shaw says, well, I hate to think that the head pilot, needs to drink, and Starbuck throws it back at her, saying, I'd hate to think Lee's new XO can't hack it. And they basically say, I'll keep your secret if you keep mine. But then Starbuck leaves and Shaw chooses not to get high. So she chooses actively to not use the drug.
Yeah. Which the problem with this moment is the problem with a lot of depictions of addiction, which is that once you are past the very early stages, it is not a choice anymore. And if this is intended to be a heroin analog, which visually it is coded as, then implying that someone could just use their willpower to not shoot up again if they really, really didn't want to is kind of fucked. Because if you are that deep in the grips of a drug like that, then no, and I'm not saying nobody has ever been able to step away from it, but like at that point, to frame it in this way where it was just somebody made you feel bad and now you're not going to use drugs anymore. If it's the kind of drug that this is coded as, that's a messed up thing to say.
Yeah, no, I agree. What I like more about this scene is I do like the parallel between Starbuck and Shaw here. Because we're gonna get another one in a few minutes, but I do appreciate what it's gonna be trying to do. But
paralleling the vices was fine. That was fine.
Yeah,
I got no issue with that.
Yeah, we'll get to keep this parallel in mind because we'll come back in a minute in a way that I like. But we go back to another flashback. We're gonna get a flashback inside of a flashback here, but it is Kane offering a promotion to Shaw, saying, I've seen officers happier about a promotion than you, and Shaw's like, well, I don't know if I really deserve it, and we presume that it is for whatever Shaw did on this ship, helping kill those civilians.
Yeah,
and Kane says, well, sometimes we have to leave people behind so we can go on, so we can continue to fight. Flashback to Kane's childhood, and it is during the first Cylon War. And her father tells her, and they're little kids. Her father, who gets stuck in a stairwell and says, abandon me, essentially says, get your sister to shelter. Kane and her sister are running across the battlefield, but her sister falls, is unable to get free, and Kane abandons her. And she goes and hides. The Cylon is about to seemingly kill Kane. Kane's about to stand up to it, but it's about to kill her, and Kane grabs the knife, the symbolic knife. But then
Grabs the symbolism.
yes, but then a Cylon gets a message and then just heads out and leaves. And Kane goes out and finds her sister's doll, presumably meaning her sister is dead because she abandoned her.
I was gonna say a couple of things. A lot of things about this. I'll try and narrow it down to a couple of things. The first is this is just more of the oppressively dark tone that I don't fucking need now. And again, I recognize that is not an objective flaw with this thing. That's a me problem. That's a my headspace problem. But I can only speak from the perspective I've got, and I ain't up for this shit right now. So there's that. I feel like the implication was actually that the Cylons took her, because if they had just because it's very specifically Kane finds her sister's doll and looks up as the ships are leaving and is screaming her sister's name. Okay. It seems to me very clearly implied that not only is her sister gone, but the Cylons actually took her away.
That's possible. Yeah.
Which unfortunately clashes with the one other thing that is definitely happening, which is as Kane comes out of the container or whatever she was in, you hear people saying like the war is over, implying that this ended because the armistice just went into effect.
Yeah, so it presumably is parallel in time to what's happening with Adama. So
yes, which makes me wonder, like, you still get to take hostages as the armistice goes into effect? Okay. But like, I say that it's like very much visually signifying that this is the case. I assume that this never comes back as a plot point, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah,
it's just how much you want to interpret how fucked up it ends up being. Yeah. Did her sister get tortured or not? Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. We had the earlier fucking thing that I mentioned with the distinctly screaming child. So again, contributing to the dark, grim, dark, fuck you.
Yeah. So here's my thing with this. I agree that I understand your headspace on it, that it is grim, dark. I like this because this is to be frank, we're gonna get a little speech here that Kane gives in a moment. In fact, let me read it because we flash back to the present and Kane says this. Sometimes we have to do things we never thought we were capable of to show enemy our will. Yesterday showed me you were capable of setting aside fear and revulsion, every natural inhibition in battle that can mean the difference between life and death. And so when you can be this, and she showed the blade, for as long as you have to be, then you're a razor. This is forcing us all to become razors, because if we don't survive, then we don't have the luxury of having enough time to become human again. I paraphrased a little bit above it, but that's the basic idea. So it's kind of going, this is the kind of thematic capstone, because this is the last scene we get of Kane in this movie. And it's the thematic capstone on this of Kane has continually chosen to basically kill her humanity at every point in her life. Kill caring about her sister, kill, she's just the person who keeps moving forward, keeps running on that treadmill, to choose to not be human at any point. And as we've seen throughout this movie, in both subtle and unsubtle ways that I've liked and not, she has slowly stripped away her humanity to become that razor, as the blade metaphor. And while I have not loved all of it, like the stuff with Gina, overall I've liked that as a metaphor, and it's the same thing that she is. What I like about this is this scene is her showing how she is doing that to Shaw, how Shaw is being rewarded and pushed into becoming the same thing that Kane is, and how Kane is basically perpetuating this cycle of dehumanization to everyone around her. That now Shaw, and it goes back to what Shaw was saying earlier to Lee, is like, I am Kane's legacy. I am what she's made me, which is a dehumanized person for just a function in the military machine of war. So I liked this backstory, and I liked what it was saying about Kane and how she is pushing that out on someone like Shaw as well, thematically.
Again, like part of the thing, and again, I a lot of this is just my headspace, but part of the thing with me with the thing with her and her sister specifically, I'm not saying that it can't work, but for the points that for the way that I would rather this try and make the points it's trying to make, I think it is a far more valid thing to talk about how the military mindset, especially when put under even greater stresses than it was trained to handle, will result in a dehumanized person who doesn't know how to relate to people. And I think showing trauma from when she was A, not in the military, and B, too young to really have any agency in her own life diminishes that, because it implies a sense of brokenness that predates what the military stripped her down to be, and what the circumstances around her that reemphasized that military mindset stripped her down to be. Because now it's like, oh, it goes way back to when she's a kid, which again is, first of all, less interesting, and second of all, I think actually undermines what at least I feel should have been the point.
Well, I agree with you that the point is the military mindset. What I think that this kid's story is doing is Kane kind of constantly puts this emphasis on kill the fear, like, and then use the anger to make you into something different. And I think that is her, and it's kind of what Shaw's was doing with Lee earlier. It is her trying to uh again kill this sense of emotion in her because she is human. And so with this thing with her being a kid, I don't blame her for leaving her sister. She was terrified
Neither
in the
do
middle of a war.
I.
Yeah. And I don't think the show is either. What I think it's trying to say is she was afraid in this moment, and understandably so. And because she has that, she wants to run away from it. She wants to run away from that feeling. She wants to run away from feeling guilty or culpable or scared or afraid, and as a result chooses to dehumanize herself. That it is the military mindset that is enabling it, but it is not just a military mindset. And the juxtaposition that we're going to get here, which is where this last part of this movie goes, which is the juxtaposition between Kane and Shaw's relationship, and then Adama and Lee's relationship, and showcasing that, like, the ways in which that Kane has actively chosen to make these choices to dehumanize herself is something that Adama has, for the most part, chosen not to do. And it goes back to the point at the beginning of the movie of, like, that Shaw was saying in that monologue of, like, we are our choices. And so what I think ultimately the point is here is not necessarily to say that, like, it's always going back to since she was a kid. I think it's ultimately going to the point of this is something that Kane is choosing to run away from, and because of that she's become this kind of person. That it is not just the military mindset. Yes, the military mindset enables it and allows it to happen, and allows this kind of person to exist, but it is not simply because of that. And I think it actually would be ultimately unnuanced to say, I'm not I'm definitely not pro-military in any way, shape, or form. But I am saying it would be an oversimplification to say it was just the military mindset that caused that.
I don't disagree with you, but let me put it this way. I think the show has already made the point earlier of how, while both have a military mindset, how Shaw and Adama handle and navigate that differently from each other. That's a point that's already been made. And it's a point that, for the purposes of this movie, is going to be made way better with a scene with Adama later on. And I don't think that this scene makes the point as well. Maybe it could have, but for me, it doesn't fit together in a way that I think ultimately benefits the movie personally.
See, I think, I don't know, it does for me. And again, and now I'm even going back to, like, the other scene with, like, the flashbacks with Adama during the first Silent War for him, because there's even a juxtaposition there where, even though, again, she's a child, so there's less overt culpability there, but there is a sense of, like, Kane ran away from her sister, whereas Adama tried to stay and save the same people, and the result ultimately is the same. The people died, but the way they choose to handle it, and deal with it later on in their life, is different. Whereas Kane makes the active choice to, I don't want to feel that way again, so I will just dehumanize everyone around me and just murder them, and just treat them like objects to use. That's the choice she makes in reaction to that trauma from the First Silent War. Whereas Adama's reaction to that very similar trauma of, like, these people that I tried to save died, he actively makes the choice to go on this mission to try to rescue those people so those people won't do it again. So it is a very clear juxtaposition between those two characters of Kane. Kane chooses just to dehumanize everyone around him, where Adama doubles down on his humanity. And I like that as a juxtaposition. And then that is even made more complicated by the fact that it is paralleling the relationship between Kane and how she offsets that into Shaw, and then Adama and how he offsets that same feeling into Lee and teaches Lee differently than how Kane taught Shaw. So I really kind of like it because it's showcasing a lot of really interesting juxtapositions and then adding complicated layers of relationships on top of that between Adama and Lee and Kane and Shaw.
Okay.
Again, I ended up, maybe it's just a different thing, but I ended up liking this movie a lot more for a lot of these reasons. Like, problems that I have with it, for sure. But I do think that there's a lot more complicated things going on in this movie that I'd like. So, yeah.
I again, I feel like we're kind of talking past each other at this point,
maybe.
but like I feel like this has the components of something that could not work, or that could have worked, but it's not landing right to me. And it might ultimately come down to just how fucking grim the tone is. That honestly might ultimately be the over seasoning that poisoned the whole dish for me. That might be it.
Maybe.
I'm not prepared to fully try and dissect that and figure out if that is the one overriding thing that just makes everything else hit worse than maybe it could have or should have. But like, there are components and things or things that it comes very close to doing but doesn't quite, that I'm on board with. It just doesn't coalesce for me.
That's fair. It coalesces for me, but it's taste, it's art, it's how people have different interpretations. You're wrong, but people are allowed to have different interpretations.
Okay, well, fuck you.
Yes. Anyways.
Oh.
Oh God, I've ruined everything. Anyways, jumping back.
Yeah, ruined or
I'm
just
not
made
looking at you.
everything
I'm not looking at you.
so much more
Back in
interesting.
the present day, here's another scene that I liked. If we're talking parallels, Starbuck and Shaw are getting ready to prepare for their mission in the Raptor, and Starbuck says, "Hope for the best, plan for the worst," as my mom used to say. And Shaw says, "Oh, Kane used to say similar things. Fear gets you killed, anger keeps you alive." And Starbuck says those two would have gotten along. But again, this is what I like. Starbuck says my mom was wrong. I believe that fear and anger are the two sides of the same coin. You gotta let go of both. If you hand me that wrench, I'm like, thank God this movie uses fucking Starbuck's abusive mother better than the whole episode about her mother did.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, it's being like, hey, Kane is an abusive person, just like Starbuck's mom. Make that very clear. Hey, Starbuck's mom is an abuser? So is Kane. Huh? And again, it is paralleling Starbuck and Shaw, but saying yes, they are both victims of abuse. But again, this is what I like about it is like, yes, we tend to have storylines nowadays about trauma gets more trauma, hurt people. And yes, that is true, but something that is ultimately often forgotten is like, yes, hurt people do hurt people. Starbuck has clearly got shit she's dealing with and pushes people away, as we've been seeing with shit with like Anders and all that nonsense. But Starbuck is still choosing to try to be a better person. And Shaw refuses to at different points. She refuses the culpability, as we saw in that earlier scene with Lee. So I like that parallel there. So it is yes, abuse people, hurt people, but you can still make the choice not to. You're still responsible for your actions. Anyways, we then jump ahead to the battle sequence where Pegasus is the distraction and the Cylons are pursuing them. And then Shaw and her team with Starbuck head in. There's a cool little sequence that I enjoy, but it's just a fun little action sequence where they get chased by raptors and they kind of fake the raptor getting blown up and they eject themselves. And so they travel there using their spacesuits.
Yes. Chased by raiders. You keep mixing up raiders and
raptors. Raiders and raptors. Sorry, raiders. But yes, they go. They sneak into the base using spacesuits rather than the actual raptor that they were in. Yep. they get on the base, and we get some, and I wrote this down because it is important, even though I know you don't care. The hybrid does say some shit when they arrive. At last they have come. I feel their lives, the destiny spilling out before me. I'm going to save this for the spoiler section, but it is actually a very important quote that actually contextualizes some interesting things for me. Quote, the denial of the one truth path played out on a world not their own will end soon enough. So
yeah, I went back and like re-listened to and read the captions on this entire muttering prophetical bullshit speech. I didn't write any of it down because I'm like that, like there's one line that, unless it's a misdirect, which 3/4 of this shit probably is, was a very overt reference to Athena, with like the joining of those who were once enemies and Like, I think the only thing, and like at a couple point it cites specific numbers, it mentions 5, it mentions 6, and like seems to be referencing possibly specific models for specific things. And like, I think the only other thing that caught my eye was the notion of like one split into many, which I would assume, and probably be wrong, that has to do with how a singular Cylon mind is kind of split apart, split across however many physical models are made.
Yeah, I'll read out some of it. What I will give this is it is prophecy bullshit, but unlike prior prophecy bullshit, they knew that this was the final season that they were going into, and so they actually mapped.
They actually knew what it meant this time.
Yes. So all of this prophecy bullshit that the hybrid is saying actually does have very specific answers, as opposed to vagary. You're the chosen one.
That was that was why I was actually willing to go back and look at it a second time, even though I'm not like, even for a show I was more invested in. I'm not the kind of person to try and parse this stuff line by line. I'm just not. But that was why I was willing to look at it a second time, simply because, okay, this sounds specific as opposed to destiny.
Yes, all of this is actually very specific and goes right up to the series finale, actually. And like, some of this stuff is alluding to shit that is gonna happen in the series finale. Some of it I'll give you right now because it's stuff that you will know. The hybrid said, "Soon there will be 4 struggling with the knowledge of their true selves." That's the final.
That's the 4 who at the in the finale of last season.
And in the midst of confusion, he will find her. The 5th, hungry for redemption that will only come in the howl of terrible suffering. So the 5th Cylon model, and is clearly alluded to being a her. So,
well, given other stuff later, I do not believe it to be true. If it is, good fucking luck justifying this shit. But I do not believe it to be true. But there is a lot of stuff that this whole back end of this thing is going to do that is painting as many red flags as possible onto Starbuck.
Yes. And then there's also some other stuff,
which I'm just kind of taking as a given as a misdirect. Because if it's not, here's what I'll say. If it's not a misdirect, then this is clunky as shit. This is clunky and way too on the nose and not as clever as they think they are. If it is a misdirect, then it's working, because I don't have a second guess off the top of my head about who the fuck it's pointing to.
He says stuff like, enemies brought together by impossible longing. Enemies as one, the way forward unthinkable, yet way forward once unthinkable is now inevitable. The 7 now 6.
That's the line that I assumed referred to Athena.
Yes. The 7 now, well, I won't say if that's true or not, but the 7 now 6, to believe them without sin will consume them. The 1 splitting into many. They will join the promised land on the wings of an angel, not an end but a beginning. So, yep.
Yeah.
All that goes right up to the series finale. Anyways, Shaw's team gets in. They get the 3 heat signatures, so they start heading towards them. They find their people. The Cylons arrive and they start a fight. During the firefight, they manage to, like I said, they get the civilians. But one of the Marines get shot, and the Cylons are starting to drag him away. And Shaw shoots him dead so that he doesn't get taken prisoner, much to Starbuck's consternation. She yells no when that happens. And they call Adama and Lee and say the mission outcome is doubtful. Their nukes detonators are fried, so they can only do a manual detonation. Back over on the Pegasus, there's sort of a big argument between Lee and Adama, where Lee is like, all right, well, let's, open our nukes. We'll just nuke the base. And Adama sort of says, you can't do that. You have to give them a chance to escape first before they get away. And Adama says destroying the ship with those people on board is a last resort. And Lee authorizes the nuclear weapons anyways, but Adama says belay that order. Don't sacrifice their lives yet. So this is clearly, again, setting up a juxtaposition between not only Adama and Kane, but Kane's relationship with Shaw and Adama's relationship with Lee. That Adama's teaching Lee different lessons to value human life and try to give them as much chance to survive as possible instead of being very flippant with it. So, which I like that as a parallel. And they do eventually get a call from them at the last moment, supposedly. And Lee sends an evac Raptor. And Lee orders Starbuck to stay behind to blow up the detonator. So they start
not to put too fine a point on, bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, okay, there were 4 people who were sent. There was Shaw, there was Starbuck, there was, I guess, the tech who was, trying to fix the remote detonators that got fried and couldn't, and there was the random Marine who Shaw had to shoot in the head. This isn't even just about Lee having potential feelings for Kara. Between the 3 people there, your XO, your CAG, and a tech, you're going to order one of the 2 far more valuable people to stay behind and die, as opposed to that. Look, and I'm not saying he should be flippant about putting anyone to their death, but just from a practical, pragmatic standpoint, before we even enter into the fact that he has a personal connection with Starbuck, the idea that he would order her to be the one to stay behind, I do not buy that for a fucking second. And this thing glosses over it so fast in hopes I didn't notice. Bullshit.
Yeah, I agree with that. Especially since Starbuck is their best Viper pilot. Yeah.
She's the CAG. She's the best Viper pilot. You know her personally. She's your friend. Bullshit. Not when there was another option who was right fucking there.
Yep. Yeah, well, we kind of glossed past that, but yes, I agree on that. But basically they get out and Starbuck's about to stay behind and send everyone else on their way, but Shaw pulls her gun on Starbuck and says, I'm going to be the one to do it. Shaw gives Starbuck her knife, because symbolism, as we talked about before.
Take the symbolism. Cool. I'll have this melted down and we'll never see it again.
We'll never talk about it again. But yes, Shaw stays with the nuke. And Starbuck asks why, and Shaw says, you know why. And Shaw salutes Starbuck as they leave. Shaw then heads deeper into the facility. And she starts...
So, you know what they should have done with the knife? They should have just had Shaw keep it and leave it behind. Yeah. Because she's about to physically move locations.
Yes.
They should have had her pick up the detonator and leave the knife.
Yes.
That's what it should have been. Giving it to Starbuck was so fucking stupid.
Yes. Well, Shaw heads further in the facility and she meets the hybrid. And the hybrid says, come in, Major. I've been waiting for you a long time. And she says, what are you? And he says, a man, or am I a machine? My children believe I am a god. I have seen many things. The things you have done leading to this moment. Do you wish to be forgiven? And this is when we get the flashback again. And this is the point that I was talking about earlier. The thing that we missed seeing was Shaw was the first person to draw a gun and shoot the civilian in the head. So she was the one to instigate the actual killing beyond just the bluster that Fisk was doing at that point.
I just want to note, I was slightly surprised that they didn't take the opportunity to get a recognizable face or name as the hybrid.
Yeah,
because it just felt like a gimme opportunity to get an older like, because
Fun
honestly,
character
when
actor.
we just hear the voice before we see him, I was like, is that Lance Hendrickson?
Yeah.
Because it sounded a little bit like him. And then I looked up this guy. He's a character actor. He's been working like fine, awesome, good for him. It just struck me as really weird because I was kind of expecting it to be like it's that person, because their presence and like I recognize that person brings more weight to this. I was just kind of surprised they didn't do that. It's fine, it's not a flaw. I was just kind of was expecting it didn't happen.
Yeah, I will say this guy has a good voice. He's got a
Oh
creepy
no,
voice.
he's got a great voice. No shade to this guy at all. Actually, I'm gonna look up his name while you
Yeah.
talk about what he
Well,
said.
when it comes back to the present, the hybrid says, "Do you wish to be forgiven?" And Shaw says, "Yes." So she finally accepts that she is culpable for what happened, which I do appreciate. And then he says, "Come
Yes.
closer. There's something I have to tell you." And then the hybrid grabs her and says, "Kara Thrace will lead the human race to its end. She is the herald of the apocalypse, the harbinger of death. They must not follow her." So,
Yeah.
yeah.
This is a guy by the name of Campbell Lane.
Mm.
And yeah, like I said, character actor. He has, small roles in things like Dreamcatcher or Needful Things or Scary Movie 4. He was never a guy who held the spotlight, but he just did character work. That was his career. Passed away in 2014. But yeah, no, he does good work.
Well, anyways, this line about Kara Thrace and will lead human race to its end. She is the herald of the apocalypse, harbinger. If they must not follow her. I will say, I like this. This is not just normal prophecy bullshit, because what I like about it is back in the main show proper, we have just seen Starbuck arrive and saying, "I know the way to Earth." So this adds a nice sense of foreboding to everything that she's going to be doing when we get back to the show. So I actually do. This is not just like weird prophecy nonsense bullshit. She has a destiny. It is a don't trust her, even though she says we should go to Earth, which I kind of like as a shading.
I don't know if I don't dislike it. I don't know if I like it though, because it kind of depends on what happens when we come back or not.
Yeah, fair enough.
And specifically whether or not they stretch out answers on Starbuck for fucking ever the way they have a tendency to do with most things.
Yeah.
If we are getting at least some, because like here's the thing. We already have a ton of fucking questions about Starbuck. How are you alive? Where did you come from? What do you mean Earth? How do you know how to get there? What the fuck was this other prophecy you would like? We already have a fuck ton of questions. None of them necessarily overtly paint her as potentially sinister, so I'm not going to say it doesn't add a different layer, but like whether or not I consider this to be over egging the pudding kind of depends on how it's handled when we come back.
Yeah, fair.
Because this could be an interesting sprinkle of extra flavor, or it could be one too many fucking things.
Yeah, fair. I always liked it. I always thought it was really cool. Like, because I was like, oh, Pup, she's gonna teach them how to get to Earth, and then this was like, oh, fuck. So I liked it. Anyways, Raptor's on its way back. Starbuck says that Shaw stay behind. Lee is relieved at that a little bit. But then Shaw calls and she says, I have to warn you about Kara Thrace. But then they lose her signal, so she is unable to warn them about the danger of Starbuck. Alas. Ooh. Back with the hybrid, Shaw says, the hybrid says, as my existence comes to a close, only to begin anew in ways uncertain. And Shaw's like, you're scared, aren't you, mother fracker? And then he says, all this has happened before and will happen again. And Shaw blows up the base.
Yeah. Oh, and I forgot to mention it was during the young Adama flashback where we heard him call the Cylons cocksuckers, which, boy, that threw me off.
Yeah, could have called them chrome suckers, you know? Yeah,
it was just one of those moments of like, wow, you really just wanted to lean into the fact that this was being broadcast as an R-rated film.
Mm-hmm.
The brains being splattered across screen and the cocksuckers like, well, we can't say fuck because we put in a replacement swear. What can we say? Ooh, here we go.
Yeah.
Let's give this civilization the exact same casual homophobia that we have here. Joy.
Mm-hmm. Back on the Pegasus, Lee is talking to Adama, And he's like, Starbuck recommended Shaw for a commendation. And Lee's like, well, she wasn't really looking for medals. And Adama's like, well, I've been going through laws and hard to find any fault in anything they did. And Lee's like, they butchered civilians. How can you ignore that? And Adama says, I didn't face the situation she did. I had the president in my face arguing for the civilian fleet all the time. I had Colonel Ty, I had you. And also, when you have kids, you see yourself reflected in their eyes. I stopped myself because I knew I would have to face you the following day. If you hadn't been in the CSE, and then Lee says, if you hadn't been in the CSE, I would have ordered the strike. Kara would be dead. And Adama says, you did nothing wrong, neither did I. We both made decisions to accomplish our mission. And they sort of asked, like, well, was Shaw, were they wrong? And Adama said, well, if I believed in gods, I would say they'd be judged by a higher power. But because I don't believe in that, history will have to make its judgments. And since history's first draft is written in our logs, and then Adama says, well, I guess I'll have some writing to do. So, and Adama says, think about that commendation. So
there's part of this I like and part of this I don't.
Yes, exactly. Very much so.
I like it insofar as Adama does a very good job of laying out some of the key fundamental differences. Now, he links it like specifically to being a parent, but the actual point is that he had real human connections that kept him from killing his humanity, and Kane didn't. There's the notion that Kane specifically cut herself off from that voluntarily. But regardless, the ultimate point of why she made the decisions that she made and why Adama makes the decisions that he makes and why the two were never the same is Adama keeps the things that ground him close and Kane pushes them away. That point is very good. Then there's this weird overarching wishy-washiness that doesn't quite, it walks right up to the line of going, well, who are we to judge the war criminal monster who ordered the death of civilians and was okay with the sexual torture of someone? Who are we to judge? It doesn't quite go that far, but it walks right up to the line.
Yeah, that's what was odd to me. And this is the thing I alluded to when I was like, I don't know about this ending, because I agree with you. Love the point that Adama makes, like there was a distinction between me and her. I don't even necessarily dislike the point of like he doesn't specifically judge. It's one of those like history will be the judge. I just have to be the one to go forward and try to deal with it.
That could have worked, but
yeah, but it's that point of like, it's hard to find fault in anything they did, is the line that I'm like, no, I can find fault. Like Lee even says it. They butchered innocent civilians. He says that in his line. So it's just odd, and it's odd to me because it's the movie doesn't seem to agree with that point, because the movie is being very clear, like making these juxtapositions between like these are the difference. Like Kane is making active choices to kill this part of her. Like it is being very clear in like choice, and you have to choose to accept culpability and responsibility for these things, and you are making a choice to do it. That was the whole thing with Shaw finally acknowledging with the hybrid that she wants forgiveness, accepting responsibility for her choices rather than saying, oh, I just give myself to the system or whatever, it's not my fault. So like the movie seems to make that very clear all the way through. And then it ends on this odd note where it has a moment to kind of put a thematic like feather in its cap, like this, if in case you didn't get it through all of our symbolism, here's the point. And it just kind of goes, maybe not. And it's just odd. It's an odd, I'm just like, I was sitting here being like, why would you write it that way? It's just, it was weird. That's the thing that gets me about it. Cause like, normally I would toss it up to the Battlestar Galactica's writers have fucked morals, like we saw with the Union episode, which like ended on the sister, like it just, that was a bad ending to that episode. But here it's like, no, this movies have been pretty clear, like we can judge her actions. I mean, like it's odd. It's just weird to me. I don't understand it.
It is the point at which to make clear the moral of your story, and instead it goes, what are morals? But like the thing is, it does kind of parallel what happened with Kane anyway, because like the specifics have left part of my head, but I remember being annoyed with her story ending the way that it did, because it was contrived to have a very overly neat wrap up for her character when she appeared before, where she backed down from the worst thing that we would have personally seen as viewers, we would have personally seen her do. And then before there is any question of consequences for anything else she'd done up to that point, she's killed by a third party for all intents and purposes. And there was the completely antithetical to what the promise of her showing up even was. Cleanness of that already annoyed me. And this kind of feels not a direct parallel, but like I'm being reminded of that all of a sudden.
Yeah, you want to know? I wouldn't put it as bad as that. I think the show did a worse job than this movie does. I think this movie again is kind of being very clear throughout the way, like the way the scenes are framed, like the way we're like even the shot. Like again, as much as I hate the Gina stuff in this movie, it's very clear like the fact that like we're linking the mistreatment of Gina to Kane's choice to kill civilians is a very clear overt like, yes, you should be judging her for this. Like there's a clear judgment of the show just visually onto Kane throughout all of this, except for in this scene. And thinking about it for a second, I think the reason, this is my guess for what happened, is why they're doing it this way, is they wanted to do the, we're not telling you, we're the kind of show that doesn't give a big Star Trek speech and give you the, I think it's one of those like, we let you decide sort of thing, as opposed to we're giving you the moral. But I think this is a moment where you kind of can at this point. It doesn't need to be it doesn't need to be a Captain Kirk or Captain Picard speech of like, yes, she was wrong, and in Starfleet we have morals. But I think it could have given a little bit more of a nudge in that direction. I just think it's the show kind of being like, we don't tell you how to think, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think that you might be right. And I think the thing is like, first of all, I would argue there are times where you should be clear with the morals.
Yes.
Because if you decide to just leave people to come up with their own moral conclusions, it says to me that you don't actually have a moral point to make.
Yes.
But if you want to approach it that way, then you simply do not address it at all, as opposed to deliberately muddy the fucking waters like this.
Yeah.
If that was what you wanted to do, then you just walk away and leave the audience to sort shit. You don't like mess shit up.
Who's to say? Let history decide. Yeah, because I think that is what the show is angling for. It's like, you decide, viewer, and I'm like, no. You've been very clear. Like the show has been very clear. Kane's like, a piece of shit.
Like, what do you mean we decide? You loaded the deck for what the point was.
Yeah, I think it's just trying to be the like, we're not Star Trek sort of thing. I think that it kind of goes to that grim dark tone of like, this isn't Star Trek. We're Battlestar Galactica. We let the morals be more gray, and it's not so clear. You know, that sort of thing.
Yeah, except they repeatedly fail at a million opportunities to actually do that legitimately, as opposed to superficially. Yeah. And here we fucking are again.
It's just annoying because the rest of this movie I think is really good about that, and it kind of weirdly has a weird fumble at the end here. Not so bad that I think they don't get the touchdown. Let me put it that if we're gonna stick in that metaphor. I still think they get the touchdown, but it was like one of those moments like, oh, are you about to trip right at the 10-yard line? Like, what's happening?
You got the touchdown. you missed the extra point.
Yeah, exactly. That's how football works.
I know, right? Sports.
Yeah. I think that's like I think my metaphor was cohesive. I don't know about yours. I don't know about extra points. I don't know how football works.
I'm going by how football works, but
I don't know how football works really. But see, I think my metaphor was cohesive.
That's the thing. After you score a touchdown, you have an opportunity for an additional point, either a 2-point conversion or you kick a field goal for 1 extra point.
Sure.
Jesus Christ. I don't like sports. I still do that.
I know they get a touchdown and they're supposed to kick the ball in between the big T thing.
Yep, that's the extra point.
Yes.
That's if you go for 1 extra point. You can also try for a 2-point conversion, which is to basically score a second touchdown when you're already at the line.
Sure.
God damn it, woman. Jesus. Don't turn me into the sports knowledgeable person by default. Fuck.
I think you have to because I did not know that. I legitimately did not know the 2-point conversion was the thing. I knew you got a touchdown and then you could kick the ball and maybe get an extra point if you shoot it through the tee. But I did not know that you could do another thing. I didn't know that was an option until literally right now.
how are you embedded enough into masculine subcultures that you were a fucking Eagle Scout? But between the two of us, I'm the one who
Do you
knows how
understand
football
how
works.
gay Boy Scouts are? That was
No,
the
I don't. I wasn't allowed to join because my mother saw it as a recruitment for the military.
let me let you in on what happens at Boy Scout camp. There were a lot of teenage boys fucking each other. And by the end of that summer, every single person at that camp that I worked with, we were like giving each other, like regardless of whatever, we were giving each other back rubs. We were like touching each other. No homo though, but like it was homo. So like yeah, the sports Boy Scouts has nothing to do with sports culture whatsoever. I'm not saying that there aren't sports guys in Boy Scouts, but like way less than you would think. It is a bunch of fucking weird ass nerds in Boy Scouts. At least the camp that I worked at. The kind of people that would be a camp counselor. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
Anyways, we have our last scene of the movie with Starbuck just hanging out in a corridor, and Lee sort of sees her, and she's playing with the knife. And Lee sort of says, any idea why she did it? Maybe she had, or sorry, Starbuck asked that. And then Lee says, maybe she thought she had a lot to answer for. Maybe she thought she had it coming, is what Starbuck says. And Lee sort of says, well, we have a lot to answer for. All of us have a lot to answer for. Starbuck says, I've chosen to reassign myself to Galactica, mostly because I have a beef with my commanding officer. Just kind of jokingly, but she sort of says, like, I don't want to get embroiled in all of this. The sexual tension we got going on is kind of the vibe. And then she makes the joke, well, didn't you hear? I have a destiny, you know, according to a Cylon. And it's supposed to be a big, like, ooh, we know something's going on with Starbuck now. And she says, you're stuck with me till the end, which again, that's foreshadowing. So that's the end of the show's coming and you're stuck with Starbuck till the end and maybe she's bad. And that is basically the end of the movie. She said, I gotta go break in your new CAG. So
yep.
Bit of a, ooh, will Starbuck do bad things? Essentially. That is the end of the movie. I am going to do my spoiler minute here, so give me 60 seconds on the clock. So if listeners, you do not want spoilers, just like Vera does not, you can skip ahead 60 seconds in real time.
And go.
So obviously the big thing here is Starbuck. Starbuck does lead humanity to their end, but it is because humanity changes and merges with the Cylon, so we're technically not human beings. We're at least the human beings that the people of Caprica at all are, but different types of humans. So that is what they mean by that. It's a bit okay. But I do like the foreshadowing element of that. I think it's kind of nice and a little play on words sort of thing. The one element here that I did like is there's a line that the hybrid has about like, oh, they're trying to buck their destiny on a planet that is not their own, which I do like because we have this thing of like all the step before and will happen again. But the whole idea that the end of the show ends on is that by being on this new Earth and by choosing to work with the Cylons and merge with them, means that we possibly can change our destiny. Doesn't necessarily mean that we will, but we might be able to change our destiny of this constant destruction. So I do kind of like that line alludes to that.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. All right, we will come back to that because let me put it this way. Let me put it this way. There's a line that the hybrid says in this finale here that actually, now watching it, having seen the series finale of the show, I actually think is a nice little like, oh, that alludes to a possibility, considering what happens in the end of the series finale. That the series finale does not make clear, but the hybrid does. So I actually kind of which I liked. So we'll come back to it, I think. So just remind me when we get to the series.
I'm going to assume it's the allusion to an angel, but we'll see.
No, we've had enough allusions to angels in the show already, so that's just a hat on a hat at this point.
Fair.
So, no, that is not the line. I will tell you the line later on. Anyways, right. What did you think? We kind of already got this. Look, what do you think of the movie?
Here's what I'll say. I am, and I mean this very sincerely, I am very glad that you liked it, and I'm very glad that this had you to advocate for it, because there is good in this, even though, like, I had a hard time seeing it because it rubbed me the wrong way on tone alone. And I don't deny the good that is in this. it was just buried under the tone, and possibly as a result of that, the stuff that didn't work just stood out to me way more than the stuff that did. And I think that is largely a matter of perspective. And I am legitimately glad that that you were in a position to advocate for this thing, because I clearly wasn't.
Yeah, that's fine. And like I said, that's fine. I mean, I totally understand. Like, it's a very it's grimdark even for Battlestar Galactica.
Yes.
And as a result of that, I understand it. The world is, we need more hopeful things right now, not necessarily more grimdark things. So I get not wanting the tone. That being said, for me, like I've made clear, this did work for me. Not everything did. The Gina stuff didn't work for me. The clear, like, shooting the XO, getting to see that is not something I was needed to see. And it sort of indulges itself in that. But that being said, I think there's, you know, it has been I am kind of heartened by the fact that I like this, because as we've been talking about already, like, my estimation of Galactica as a show has gone down since we've been watching it, since from where I went into this rewatch. So it is nice to come across a thing being like, no, this actually was rather good. Not perfect by any means, but actually rather good, and I did end up liking it. So that is a nice place to be, and I'm not trying to be a devil's advocate. Like, I legitimately kind of expected to come into this being like, oh god, this is going to be bad. And I actually came away being like, no, I actually think there's some interesting points that it's trying to make. It is a very complicated structure, doing, as we were saying, flashbacks within flashbacks within flashbacks, and yet I think it manages to be deft enough with them that it is able to try to, you know, like, say some thematic things with these parallel juxtapositions and stories across multiple characters and multiple ideas. And not only do that within the context of the movie, but use some of our knowledge of the series, like the stuff with the So Say We All stuff, to do that subtly. It's not overtly hitting us on the head being like, look, Adama offered them hope and she offered them revenge. Look at the distinction. But by evoking a similar thing as a comparison, it's able to subtly bring out that difference between the two characters. So actually there's a lot of subtle work here, and a lot of things that it's doing within its own context, within it being an element of a larger TV show. And even the sort of superfluous stuff, like the whole prophecy bullshit that it's trying to do, that it's trying to kind of justify this as a piece that exists between seasons 3 and 4 of this show. It's trying to justify, like, ooh, well, we got to sprinkle in some mysteries for people because we're not, like, season 4 isn't going to start for another 5 or 6 months, you know, so we're going to give them some stuff to nibble on. Even that, I think, adds a fun dimension, like the stuff with Starbuck being like, ooh, maybe she's dangerous now. So I think even that superfluous stuff that does not necessarily enhance this story does at least have a nice little fun element to it as someone watching the show, if you're watching this week to week back in the day. So I ultimately really think this works. Not everything, but on the whole, I think this is a really solid movie. So, yeah.
Cool.
That's my thoughts. Anything else, Avira?
No.
All right.
I'm tired.
Stuff time then.
Stuff. You can find my stuff by looking for Council of Geeks. Patreon pays the bills and enables me to do this as my living. The main thing that supports is the Council of Geeks YouTube channel. Recent-ish videos that should have come out, if my schedule hasn't been thrown off again, will be me taking Pixar Chief Creative Officer Peter Docter to task for some real bullshit he decided to talk.
That sounds like a fucking Scrubs name. Peter Docter here, you know what I mean? That sounds like some made up fucking comedy name. Anyways.
Like, trying to write down my notes for that were a pain in the ass because his name is spelled Docter and fucking thing kept auto-correcting it.
That's funny.
It's pronounced the same, so it doesn't really matter, but it just annoyed me on principle. So that, as well as like a list of what I think are the best cliffhangers in Doctor Who, should also have come out relatively recently, or will soon if it hasn't already. This will not be my Ferengi video. It will have come out relatively soon to this, either slightly before or slightly after. That's the main channel. There is also the Break Room of Geeks, my secondary channel, where I put my thoughts about whatever I have watched, listened to, read, or played lately. it'll have been a few weeks ago, but I have a review up of the novel of Project Hail Mary, which resulted in the presumably hit film, which I'm going to try and get to the theaters to see. I can't promise that. Getting to the theaters is a pain in my ass these days. But that, whatever else I've been up to over there, you can also find Council of Geeks on Blue Sky. That takes care of the geek.
And you can find me at Jesse Dinder on YouTube. I do video essay stuff. The Ferengi video should be out, hopefully. We shall see.
Lies and slander.
I'm just teasing you at this point. But there'll be other videos. I also have a secondary channel called Jesse Dinder After Dark. I will be reviewing Daredevil Born Again. I was going to review Invincible.
That's coming out.
I was going to review Invincible, but I am traveling this week, which is the week that it's releasing, so I will not get to it in a bit. And there's also 3 episodes releasing at once, so I'm just saying, fuck it. I will review Daredevil Born Again. But I also have a few other videos coming out, so check me out over there. I also am on Blue Sky and Instagram. I am also on Nebulos, the streaming service that houses my movie Identities. Check that out. And I am also on Patreon that helps me pay my bills. Please support me there. Can I announce that? Yeah. Oh, no, never mind. Actually, very soon, either... I'm not sure if it's out yet. But I have been commissioned to write a comic for an upcoming anthology from Iron Circus Comics. I just finished my first draft of the script, so that'll be sent into them soon. But I'm mentioning it now. It's not going to be releasing until I think either end of this year or early next. But they're going to be doing a Kickstarter for it in a few weeks. So be on the lookout for that. I will announce it more when it comes out. But I'm very excited about that. The comic is very depressing. But it is the first comic that I have ever written, and I'm very excited to see what my artist comes up with. So should be fun. Yay! Alrighty, anything else, Avira?
No.
All right. With all that said, I hope y'all, my friends, live long and prosper.
Be seeing you.